पाजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह पाजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
So, welcome friends to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who once again wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, especially for the modern age. That's further supported by the holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics of Sant today. Now this high truth of the ages is the noble path of Sant, or path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality or true religion, that is so graciously gifted to seeking humanity by the great holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics in every age, who are themselves the true representative of the Supreme Lord even today. And although little known among the masses, once encountered, a sincere true seeker can easily recognize that this noble path or true way encompasses all true faiths and beliefs as the noble source of all, details of which can be found in our humble literature, spiritual centers or YouTube channel, as well as in the Holy Discourse series of ISTAuk.com, among other Sant sources from around the world. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction about who we are and what we represent here today, especially for those who don't already know. While for those who do, then please forgive my repetition. I hope to be brief. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short, and although now global, we originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Savan Singh Ji of the holy lineage of Sant in India, the Levant and Persia. As such, we are a spiritual education centre commissioned to provide the very highest truth of Sant to those who wish to know. Thus, we simply build upon the work of the more traditional methods currently available elsewhere. In this way, our given mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view, especially now in the modern age, while also correcting the confusions of the past and even that of the present about what is the real truth. But this high teaching is not new. It is the age-old path of true spirituality, known today as the holy truth of Sant, which in fact has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religious or philosophical teachings that we all know of. Indeed, Holy Masters tell us that the simple teachings of mass religion and mass philosophy, or even mass science, are only there to elevate the masses to a position of higher truth seeking, so they can understand and ultimately practice true spirituality or true religion, with all the love, grace and wonder that such a gift entails. Now for those who do listen and take heed, Holy Masters tell us that they are indeed the most fortunate ones of humanity. As for myself, I am a humble servant and sincere devotee of the very highest truth of Sant for many years now, who has given his life in the service of the true Lord, as well as to the Holy Masters of today. As such, I do not seek any recognition, praise or reward, as I only act with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself, as well as that of the Holy Masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life and creation to those who wish to know. I thus live in the Supreme Lord's will, and simply offer my humble demonstration, guidance and true knowledge to all who seek the same, especially in the modern age. Now, as a friend and co-traveller on this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human form and instead listen to and take heed of the loving truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form, who has himself been transformed by the Holy Masters of today. Thus, I represent the proof that truly anyone can rise above their given karmic role to become truly noble once again by the true Lord's grace, if only they earnestly seek it, no matter how wretched or difficult their life may have been. For the true Lord of all is not only compassionate for the suffering humanity who seeks the truth, but also truly merciful. Therefore, everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom from the true Lord itself, for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth, which I have been asked to share with you. But please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble servant in any way, for you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the true Lord, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord and the Holy Masters have to offer you. There is no need to give up your current faith or belief, only to listen, explore, and see for yourself the further truths that are hidden within you. For true spirituality is not a religion or a scripture, it is a birthright of every human being here on earth, no matter what their current background, belief or circumstance. Now for those who need further assistance, they may privately contact the main speaker directly via email or video by first subscribing to our valuable information service at ISTAuk.com and then requesting the direct contact details of our main speaker from our administrators. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual questions within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule and sheer number of inquiries. Thank you. Now, before we start today's question and answers, I would like to, as is common practice for the past few months, to do a short introduction about the topic. Now, as this year closes, let us now summarize about what true spirituality actually is and how to best practice noble living in everyday life. True spirituality actually means transformation from a limited physical state to an infinite spiritual state, and so its practice is truly transformational. Anything else is not true spirituality, but may be helpful in reaching a state of awareness that seeks true spirituality in the end. Furthermore, by spiritual transformation, we mean to transform from a human animal state of mere flesh and bones to a human being state of higher awareness, ultimately of one's soul. Furthermore, all true holy masters, past and present, tell us that the only way to directly connect with our true self of the soul, and then with that of the Supreme Lord, our Creator origin, is to withdraw our conscious attention to within ourselves at the third eye, or inner wisdom eye, point located in the middle of the head, about an inch above and 4 inches behind the physical eyes, specifically located between the pituitary gland and the pineal gland in the center of the brain. This is because this sixth chakra, or third eye point, is the true place from where our life consciousness flows from a higher dimension, meaning the spiritual astral form of ourselves, which then spreads throughout the brain and body to give us life. This is how life consciousness powers the otherwise lifeless physical body of gross matter. Now, to see all this for ourselves, the noble practice of Surat Shabd Yoga is the means by which all true saints or holy masters, the true representatives of the Supreme Lord, tell us is the best way in the modern age, also known as bhakti or devotional meditation. This form of holy meditation, performed with the eyes closed in quiet solitude, is the only means by which our gross consciousness can experience higher truth, while still living in a human body. No need to die for it, as some religions suggest. As such, a true practitioner journeys to ever higher levels of consciousness, where ever greater truths or realities of oneself is revealed, and the true magnificence of our existence and of creation is so remarkably unveiled. Regarding spiritual practice, there are two types of practitioners. Most are fond of visual spectacle, or adventuring within the realms, and so on. Thus they prefer to get their progress experiences that way, through the practice of meditation and through focusing on the physical aspects of the path, plus mindful activities, more than on love and devotion for the high truth, while others want only true divine love and access to the highest bliss of the true kingdom of God directly, and to absorb themselves in this feeling day and night. In pursuit of this noble goal, they proceed via the route of divine love, abandoning all rigid rules and practices, other than following the holy precepts of the Lord, as well as following what their higher intuition tells them, rather than what their mind tells them. Thus, they do not focus on actual physical or mental practices as such. They just go with the flow, with love in their heart. For them, they witness miracles and coincidences all the time in their physical life, even if they have no inner experiences, and their hearts are filled with love and devotion beyond mindful experiences. In fact, lower level experiences up to the third realm are generally distracting and mostly obstruct our progress through their fascination to our minds that holds us in a trance-like state almost. But as they are not that attractive to our soul, they do not hold our attention for long. Yet sadly, those practitioners who actually absorb themselves in those experiences can easily lose faith if something goes wrong in the world for them. The true purpose of holy meditation or holy contemplation, therefore, as explained by the holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics, is to reveal the truth of actual reality versus perceived reality. You see, all the objects and events that we experience in the karmic worlds, meaning the physical, astral and causal, have been created out of illusion simply for creating experiences, yet they look like reality. The reason for this is simple. They are there for the soul to have a real-like experience of something other than that of its true self, just for fun. Now some may question this wisdom when looking at it from a position of suffering, but even suffering serves a purpose. And don't forget, it's all an illusion in truth, so nobody's actually happy and nobody's actually suffering, in the higher truth sense, which can be seen directly through holy meditation. Furthermore, while experiences are all real, things are not real. Indeed, the objects that we, the illusory mind, say are real because of our experience of them, are just created temporarily for the experience. For example, you have a dream. In a dream, you taste a cup of tea, very nice tea indeed. But then you wake up, and the experience of the taste of the tea is still there, momentarily, as an impression in the mind. But the actual things that made it happen are gone. Now nobody can say for sure that you never drank that tea, because you have actually experienced it, and the pleasure or taste is in your memory. Therefore, it was a genuine experience of enjoying tea, but there's no tea and no cup to account for it. They have disappeared, yet the drinking of the tea as an experience has not disappeared. But holy meditation also serves another important function, which is this. It allows us to connect with our higher truth that emanates from the Lord or Master itself, known as the Shabadun, or divine melody power, which can pull us directly to its source, the true Lord of all creation. Moreover, Kirpal Singh Ji, a 20th century advanced spiritual practitioner, says this: holy meditation banishes the fear of death and frees one from the cycle of births and deaths. It removes obstacles and difficulties and useless pain and pleasure. It grants miraculous powers, esoteric knowledge, and the merit of recitals and penances. Eventually, duality is shed, while the dross and filth of the mind wear off, and the refulgence of God's name becomes manifest. The devotee is then ever at the feet of the Master or the true Lord. End of quote. Indeed, holy meditation also makes us a better Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, truth-seeking scientist even, etc. Because we become better human beings, filled with love, compassion, kindness, tolerance, non-judgment and fortitude. One develops more compassion for our fellow human beings, and there is also greater capacity for unconditional love and service, which means that the meditator does not expect any reward, gratitude or thanks for their service to humanity. There is also an increased satisfaction at work and at home, and consequently one develops inner peace and wholeness. One begins to know that human life is hugely meaningful. And finally, the greatest achievement will be one's ability to let go, to have less greed, hatred, lust, pride and selfishness. These 5 vices, when considerably reduced, will positively affect our mental and spiritual well-being immensely. Holy meditation also allows the practitioner to confirm for themselves what they have heard from the enlightened ones. Saint Kabir Sahib, a 15th century holy master of India and the father of modern Sant Mat, further explained this. He says, contemplating on the Sar Shabad, or divine sound, even for half a moment, confers much more spiritual merit than living in the holy city of Kashi, Varanasi, for millions of years. The knowledge of the essence of the Shabad is indeed the meditation of all meditations, and the austerity of all austerities. The keen devotee who obtains this knowledge definitely obtains the rewards of the eternal abode. With knowledge of the Shabbat, the heap of sins of countless lifetimes will be burnt, just as a huge heap of dry grass burns in the fire. The essence of the Shabbat is the basic support of everything, but is itself without support. It is formless and is beyond the attributes of Maya. It is all-powerful and is the life force or consciousness of all beings. It is even more powerful than the deities and the demigods, but it is realized only with proper attention to holy meditation. Indeed, a devotee who earnestly practices hearing the divine melody of the Shabbat within oneself reaches the difficult to obtain state of union of the left and right energy channels, emanating from the central channel of divine consciousness. This central channel is called the Sushumna channel, or grace, in yogic systems. These channels meet at the third eye. In deep silence, the devotee sees the intense eternal reality. End of quote. In another verse, Kabir Sahib adds, "Then our mind too, its very fabric, is completely coloured with the dye of the Satguru's constant remembrance. In this state, such persons gain honour and glory in the court of the Lord, and thus fulfill the great purpose of human life spiritually." This is the importance of holy meditation. Now 24-hour sweet remembrance of the Lord or Holy Master is the key to successful spiritual practice, according to the Holy Master's perfect saints or noble mystics. Then when one is not able to meditate, or during times of performing daily activities, what practice should we engage in, so as to keep the remembrance of the Lord or our Master ever in our thoughts? Holy Masters tell us that in the modern age, the holy mantra of 5 charged names alone, given to disciples at the time of holy initiation, or the phrase Radhaswami or Satnam, should be used to focus one's thoughts upon the true Lord in readiness for holy meditation during waking hours, rather than engaging in other lesser activities such as austerities, rituals, or even idle thinking of the worldly minded, etc. However, unless our repetition of the holy mantra is coupled with sweet remembrance of the Lord or Holy Master, it will not be so effective. Similarly, our meditations can be effective only when we have true concentration, and that will come about when we have the Lord or Master's sweet remembrance enshrined in our heart. Sweet remembrance of the Lord or Holy Master always helps us to concentrate. Therefore, we should not sit in meditation as a mere duty or in a mechanical way. We should sit with a heart filled with fondness and sweet remembrance of the Lord or Holy Master. Kabir Sahib says this: during Simran, meaning repetition of the holy mantra, the longing for God or Master in one's mind should be as intense as that of a lover for the beloved, so that sitting, standing, awake, or asleep, the form of the beloved is always in the mind of the lover. He does not forget it even for a second. End of quote. Indeed, the results of one's repetition will be in direct proportion to the love and faith brought to bear upon it. One may have heard many holy masters, perfect saints, or noble mystics speak about 24-hour bhakti meditation as being the ideal. But what do they actually mean by this? Well, the answer is quite simple. It is an extension of formal meditation known as holy contemplation. This little-known secret way to do 24/7 meditation without formal sitting, simply achieved by constantly relating everything you do and everything you experience, or everything that happens to you, to your true Lord or Holy Master, as part of the grand play of creation, thus keeping the sweet remembrance of the Lord or Holy Master ever in your mind. In this way, a constant remembrance and devotion can be practiced quite naturally, that is even greater than formal meditation, because it is usually accompanied by stronger feelings of love and devotion, and a true relevance to one's earthly existence. I would now like to talk about the actual requirements of a disciple once initiated, as well as for those who are serious about pursuing the holy truth and true salvation, but have not yet attained holy initiation by living Holy Master. Indeed, to show how important these requirements are, each religion has specified a set of rules of conduct that allow a worldly man or woman to become a noble and pious being, worthy of salvation and the holy wisdom of God. This indeed separates the serious practitioners from the club members' approach to religion. I will now briefly go through each one of the main religions or spiritual paths for the modern day ideal of these requirements. First is the 5 precepts of Kuan Yin, the Eastern philosophy of Supreme Master Ching Hai. Number 1, refrain from killing or harming any living being. Number 2, refrain from using any form of intoxicants. Number 3, refrain from taking what does not belong to oneself. Number 4, refrain from dishonesty or speaking what is not true. Number 5, refrain from sexual and emotional misconduct. Next is the 5 principles of Sant, the universal holy path to God realization. Number 1, do no harm. Therefore, a strict lacto-vegetarian diet is essential. One must also avoid cruelty or killing of any living thing unnecessarily. Number 2, do not indulge in intoxicants. Therefore, avoid all alcohol, non-prescription drugs, caffeine, smoking, gluttony, or an unhealthy diet that leads to harm for the human body. Number 3, do not indulge in immoral behavior. Therefore, avoid lust, gambling, greed, wrath, or anger, lying, sloth, envy, and pride. Selfishness and deceiving others must also be avoided. Number 4, do one's meditation for at least 2.5 hours every day. This may be completed in 2 sittings. Also important is the continued recitation of the 5 holy names of God. And number 5, do regularly attend the satsang of the holy masters and seek the company of other disciples in preference to worldly companions for moral support and practical support, for they are in truth your spiritual brothers and sisters in this lifetime. Also, where possible, seek to serve the Master as Seva and or their Sangat or followers. Next is the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism, a universal mindfulness philosophy, which Buddha says to be successful in meditation and to attain enlightenment. The Buddha said that one needs to practice pious living. To do that, one must follow the Noble Eightfold Path. It is also known as the middle path or middle way, recommended by the Buddha. Number 1, right understanding, means accepting the 4 noble truths, which are the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering, the possibility to end suffering, and the method of ending suffering. Number 2, right resolve, means to renounce the pleasures of the body, to change one's lifestyle so that one harms no living creatures and has kind thoughts for everyone, thus to live a pious life. Number 3, right speech, do not gossip, lie, or slander about anyone. Refrain from using harsh words. right action. Do not kill, steal, or engage in any unlawful sexual act or misconduct. Number 5, occupation, right occupation. Avoid working at any job that could result in harm to nature or to any sentient beings. Number 6, right effort. Heroically work to eliminate evil from one's life. Through one's own effort, develop good conduct and a pure mind. Number 7, right mindfulness. To make oneself aware of one's deeds, words and thoughts, so that one can be free from desire and sorrow. Also being aware of one's body and curbing its excesses. And number 8, right concentration. To train one's mind to focus on a single point without wavering, so as to develop a calm, meditative mind, capable of inner concentration, awareness and wisdom. And finally, we have the 3 noble ways to live from spiritual science Sant. Number 1, do no intentional harm, whether in thought, word or deed. That means not to think badly of others, nor of nature, but to instead recognize that they have their own unique circumstances that conditions them to think or act in a certain way, often in ignorance of the harm they cause to others, themselves or the environment. Similarly, do not engage or listen to harmful speech, such as malevolent gossip, slander, cursing, arrogant judgment, and malicious talks, etc. Likewise, do not perform actions that knowingly harm others, yourself, or the planet. Also, do not judge or condemn anyone, nor nature and creation, for what they are or what they do, but instead seek to understand the whole show through sincere truth seeking. Number 2, live a noble human life means perform one's allotted duties in life as honestly and diligently as possible, while selflessly serving your family and friends and the community you live in as humble way as possible when free of duties, as if serving the Lord itself. Furthermore, rather than focusing on the natural miseries or difficulties of life, instead seek to understand and harmlessly enjoy life as best you can, within the constraints of your karmic limitations, without invoking anger, envy, or jealousy in your heart, thus simply wishing yourself and everyone else well. And number 3, sincerely seek the highest truth of self, God, and creation, by contemplating upon this objective in everyday life, through seeking the true meaning and purpose of life, while diligently following your worldly duties in a do no harm way, as best as possible, within the limitations of the circumstances you find yourself in. Similarly, meditate upon or contemplate upon the holy truth of yourself, God, and creation as much as possible. Now, for a perfect disciple, or a disciple of a perfect living master, once initiated, they should earnestly live according to the guidelines given by their master. Indeed, holy masters tell us that the best way to avoid creating new karma that has to be accounted for is to live in the will of the Lord or holy master. But what exactly does that mean? Well, holy masters tell us that anything that comes our way naturally, whether good or bad, is God's will. And if our reaction is in accordance with the holy guidelines given at initiation, then that is God's will too. However, the moment you think about what to do outside of the holy guidelines, you exercise the power of free choice, which carries consequences or karma. Therefore, if you try your best to take the right option according to the holy guidelines, but fail due to your natural ignorance or weaknesses, then you should repent sincerely to either the Lord or your master and ask for forgiveness. That sin will then be forgiven, but you must also try your very best not to make that mistake again. Furthermore, once initiated, one can simply hand over all decisions to their master by saying to their inner master, "Beloved master, please deal with it, or please guide me, since I have no wisdom yet to know what is the best thing to do." Then, if you let it be and go with the flow, while following the holy guidelines, there is no karma for you. You see, if the master has initiated you and has accepted you as their disciple, then the minimum they should do for you is to help relieve your burdensome karma, or the worst part of it, for sincere practitioners. If one doesn't have a living master yet, one can still try to live a noble and pious life, and sincerely want to be noble. They can, with real faith and good heart, surrender their decision-making moments to their Lord directly, or to the universal holy truth of all existence, or even to a past holy master, saint, or holy being that they sincerely follow, and so on. Then, even if the object of their devotion is not from a very high level, if one's heart truly yearns for the ultimate truth of all existence, and they sincerely adopt a truly pious and noble life, such as that described earlier in this short talk, then the Supreme Lord will secretly intervene and help them. To follow on from this topic of devotion to the Holy Master and the search for divine wisdom, let me explain what we actually mean by divine wisdom, a concept that all Holy Masters talk about as a means to know the holy truth of God. Intellectual knowledge is only one part of being human, but for a spiritual aspirant, one should not neglect their innate wisdom, which is the other part of being human. Only when we connect to our innate wisdom do we become noble human beings and wise. Now this wisdom also results in greater understanding between human beings and with nature itself, with greater respect for our planet and the environment, and greater feelings of equality between all human beings, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion philosophy. It further manifests as a natural feeling of compassion and love for all sentient beings. It even includes the feeling of wanting to know our true origin, and that of God creation too. Unfortunately, however, most people simply neglect this part of being human, which, apart from keeping them in spiritual darkness, often costs them their peace of mind too. So for those who are sincere seekers of the holy truth, let's now consider what issues affect their ability to attain holy wisdom and the highest kingdom of God or truth. For most people, the biggest problem is their need to overcome their inherent or acquired bad habits that has festered during their life thus far, while at the same time reawakening their higher mind's spiritual nature. Since thoughts are the major precursor of actions, let's now examine how good or bad thinking, which is the source of all good or bad deeds, affects our spirituality. In simple terms, one's pattern of thought creates an energy surge that spiritually opens a gateway to either a higher positive or a lower negative dimension, which then converts that thought into either a positive or a negative impression upon the mind. This then actually embeds itself upon the mind of the thinker, while the original thought itself is also recorded in the region of the Akashic records, where all episodes of thoughts and deeds are stored for every single living being in lower creation, on the account of karmic justice. Now the positive or negative impression left on the mind by a simple thought, if not redressed or repented for, eventually leads to positive or negative reactions that carry direct karmic consequences. For example, if you embody negative energy by being angry or grumpy about every little thing in life, then you will attract misery as your faithful companion, who will travel with you on the journey of life and will keep you in misery just like itself. On the other hand, if you change your attitude and instead embody positive energy through right knowledge or right understanding, then true faith and confidence will naturally come through an inner awakening. Thus you will attract positive encounters and feelings, and even during difficult situations you will find something positive to attach to. By adopting this approach to life, continued encounters with positive experiences will eventually result in a positive outlook, with right understanding at the center of it. In time, this will change your perspective of life into a more positive one, no matter what challenges you may face, and even negative matters will simply pass you by. Instead, you will deal with negative situations very fairly and practically. So do not dwell upon negativity, nor on self-damnation, as this only harms one further and curses the harbour of such thoughts with misery. We also have to understand that we are simply undergoing a human experience, that our physical form is not our real self and is inherently imperfect, so is liable to make mistakes from time to time, including thinking negatively about what is happening or stressfully about the future that hasn't even yet happened. It is true that life doesn't always run smooth, but it also doesn't mean that every situation is going to be bad. We have to deal with our experiences as they arise and not invent a negative scenario that may not even happen. Doing so only creates a negative oppression upon our minds that can halt our spiritual progress by distracting our attention into vain matters, causing agitation and stress. So when we make a mistake or think negatively about the future, we should just acknowledge it and forgive ourselves, but also learn from it, making any necessary corrections along the way. Indeed, negativity is one of the most subtle but powerful methods that the negative power uses to distract or halt a sincere disciple's or true seeker's spiritual progress. Apart from not dwelling on personal negativity, a true disciple or seeker should also not accept other people's negativity onto themselves, but should forgive others for their negative transgressions, which are often made out of ignorance or emotional mental distress that they may express from time to time. Let us now consider what we must actually do in order to obtain the secret and wondrous prize of the Holy Kingdom of God from the true Lord via a living Holy Master. All true saints or Holy Masters say that the shortest route to divine enlightenment is to enroll as a disciple of a living saint or Holy Master, who can personally guide us back to the Kingdom of God speedily and safely. Therefore, one should become a disciple of a true Holy Master for the sole purpose of learning about the Holy Truth and for seeking refuge in the Kingdom of God, but not for anything else. To accomplish this, however, one must first purify one's heart through pious living for at least 1 year, while listening to as many holy discourses from the Holy Masters themselves as they can, or from their enlightened disciples as is possible, and also reading as many recommended holy texts as one can, as well as performing regular prayer or spiritual contemplation, in order to firmly establish in one's heart the main objective of life, that is, God or Holy Truth realization. By doing these initial practices with faith and devotion, one can earn grace from the Holy Master in the form of holy initiation, onto the highest path of ultimate spiritual truth. To conclude this section, let me summarize the amazing hidden truth of it all. The reality is that we cannot truly complain about our circumstances today, as it is all due to our past karmas and our current attitude. So we have to instead make the best of it by seeing our difficulties and pleasures as challenges through positive thinking, not as problems via negative thinking. Indeed, as explained in earlier discourses, the absolute truth behind our individual journey or adventure in creation is that we have chosen many ways to exercise our godlike power to come into creation, even opting to be negative, to be wicked, and to be very ungodly at some point. We chose to play around in creation when we left the kingdom of God, to explore it, good or bad. We chose to experience what else we could do, apart from being one with God in heavenly bliss. We chose to do many things, have many positive or negative adventures, and to explore for ourselves the wonders of our creative power, including all the consequences of imperfection, simply because we knew that we will be rescued at some point in the future without any harm to our true self. So then, once all experiences are done, the soul will want to rediscover its true origin once more, step by step, and then re-establish how to be one with God again. It's all just a form of divine expression. So, when we are done playing with creation, God is there even in the darkness to remind us to go back to the light of the Holy Truth, through launching a remarkable rescue mission via the manifestation of the Holy Master or God's holy representative on earth. Therefore, from the soul's point of view, experiencing creation whilst in ignorance of its holy origin is exciting, daring, and challenging. Indeed, worth the effort just for the thrill of it. In summary then, there is a remarkable system of grace and merit that exists alongside the more familiar karmic system of cause and effect that all human beings have available to them, if only they could realize it. Karmic experience is also said to be a true test of faith and trust that any human being can undergo, while the rewards for persistence are truly fathomless, immense, and too remarkable to even put into mere words. This is why those who attain this coveted prize remain silent, and so just enjoy the peace, bliss, and wonder of the result. Thus, going with the flow, as mentioned in previous talks, along with making the right choices, through recognizing the signs from the Lord of what to do, is the best way to live in this world, while also doing one's spiritual practice. However, despite living in the Lord's will, we also have to make choices, and this requires special handling. So the following examples will help to explain this further. To be able to make successful or noble choices that provide a sense of peace and security, one must first consider what is the best way to make choices, which today account for around 30% of one's daily activities. This is an important matter to be sure, for it is one's choices, good or bad, that lead to real consequences. Therefore, as new karma is only created through exercising our choice-making abilities, requiring the intervention of one's limited mind, then this matter must be taken seriously. In general, if the choices available are in line with one's essential duties and responsibilities in life, and in line with the Lord's moral code mentioned earlier, such as healthily feeding oneself without gluttony, clothing oneself in simple attire without showing off, bathing and washing as needed, not in vain excess, maintaining one's shelter without extravagance or showing off, performing essential duties related to the honest welfare of one's family and dependents, attending to one's work or study diligently, spending one's honest earnings wisely without resorting to wastefulness, extravagance, meanness or pride, keeping one's health in good order, and living in an honest and moral way of life in all of one's dealings, meaning do no harm to oneself or others. Also, whether through poor diet, drugs, bad company, detrimental activities, watching or listening to negative, dark, immoral tales, music, or visual drama, while also doing no harm to other living beings, whether plants through gluttony, plucking or unnecessary killing, animals through cruelty, killing, eating, or heartless disregard, or insects through cruelty, unnecessary killing, or again heartless disregard, as well as not harming the environment and the planet, that this is the way of life that one should form, the basis of one's human existence here on earth. This means to live a noble or pious and unselfish way of life, with the attainment of high spiritual truth as one's prime objective, but also to harmlessly enjoy the creation and marvel at its wonder without taking life too seriously. Since the objective of true spiritual living is to become one with our beloved Lord or Master, and thus live in relative contentment and peace, then all that we do in life should be aimed at fulfilling this goal. The most fundamental demonstration of this goal is to live in the Lord's will by going with the flow, as explained earlier. The other part is to ask the Lord or Master for help in making the right choice in any given situation when our natural wisdom fails us. Now, one may at first think that this all seems too bothersome for one to follow, but I can assure you that it is not, and is indeed well worth the effort. If we can practice recognizing and having faith in the Lord's signs or coincidences for us, then the results will speak for themselves. But this may require little practice for a sincere follower to master. Yet it is worth it for the peace of mind and personal security it offers that seeker or practitioner. However, if an obvious sign is not seen or recognized, or we are still uncertain about how to proceed rightly, then we can simply ask the Lord to help us directly. This help may come in the form of another coincidental but remarkable sign, or a strong thought that we should observe the right principles, and thus leave the outcome to the Lord or our Holy Master to resolve, while we continue with our true noble living. Now in all this, one may still feel that life is just a burdensome duty, and that all that the Lord has planned for us is struggle, hard work and duty. But that is not true. We can also have harmless fun, pursue our innocent hobbies or interests, and just enjoy the wonder of existence, but all with gratitude in recognition of the Lord's grace for giving us such times in our life's script. So still, the Lord's acknowledgement is involved, but in a more joyous way when we're having fun. And finally, I must explain that when we develop true trust and faith in the Lord, that this whole process becomes automatic, and one can therefore live a worry-free existence, filled with love, joy, and peaceful contentment. Who would not want that if given the choice? So, living in the Lord's will and making the right choices via the Lord's grace frees us from worry, insecurity, and woefulness, and instead makes our challenging life more carefree, joyous, and peaceful. Indeed, this is how the enlightened live. which is why they are always smiling and enjoying life, no matter what is happening around them. In the present age, we all admire our achievements in science and technology, yet we ignore the greatest marvel of all, the human form itself. We take it for granted, abuse it, and then misuse it for selfish gains, yet complain when things go wrong. Furthermore, most would agree that as human beings living in a society of human beings, we are all responsible for our part in the welfare of that society. If we envision a world of peace, harmony, and joy, then we must naturally try to become competent and accomplished as human beings, moving away from the animal state ourselves. Indeed, there are two ways of living a human life, the human animal way and the human being way. So for those struggling to achieve the details, the ideals talked about today, even if already on the spiritual path, they must be patient and carry on with their sincere seeking or spiritual practice until it naturally awakens within them. In other words, one must be true to oneself and not try to pretend to be something else just to look good to their master or peers. Such a one cannot hope to progress spiritually, and at best may win some favor with their peers, but not with God. So please beware of this trait of the ego, as it will only hinder one, causing distress and delusion. Indeed, copying others' devotional behavior, or performing rituals and ceremonies to look good, does not win favor with God, nor with a true holy master. It instead only deceives one's own self. Now, at ISTAuk UK and ISTA World, we support a global spiritual awakening program through right attitude and right action. For this, our motto is ACT, A-C-T, action changes things, meaning right action born of right attitude changes things for the better. So that concludes this talk for now, but before we continue with the question and answer session, I would like to share with you something very personal that many have requested from me about my own seeking journey, sort of as an example, which I wrote down in poem form some time ago, that genuinely illustrates the state of yearning and the subsequent journey that one must follow if they sincerely seek the highest truth from the Lord. I hope you find it helpful. It's simply called A Seeker's Poem, and it comes in two parts. So let me start with part one. O Lord, after so long in the turmoil of devotion, I finally hear your calling. But what should I do? So much drama have I already endured. I don't need something new. I'm afraid of what may happen if once again I follow you. But this time you are calling me within, into the unknown. So, my Lord, after all that I have been through, what do you really want from me? 'Cause you're keeping me entranced. Are you there to distract me from my worldly duties? Or is this something new calling me within? I don't know what to do, but as the feeling grows, there's a secret part of me that really wants to know. So can you show me what I need to do now? And are you the one who is calling me within? If I follow you now, where are you going to lead me? So much tragedy have I already suffered, so much pain have I already endured, simply searching for the final truth of why I was born, searching for answers of why I don't belong. Yet, my Lord, in utter madness I hear you, and I'm coming. There is something in your calling that's familiar, like a truth I cannot ignore. And as you pull me closer, I can sense you're there to help. Like a secret friend or father, I have always known before. I have always been a fortress of yearnings deep inside, but now, O Lord, I'm ready, so you don't need to hide. Show yourself, 'cause I'm dying to meet you. Show yourself, for you know who I am. It's your turn now. And you are the truth that I have been looking for all of my life. If you are, then show yourself. I'm ready to learn. For as you pull me closer, I've never felt so certain that you are the one that I have been looking for and the reason I was born. I've always been so different. Normal rules did not apply. So is this the time? Are you the way that I finally found out why? Show yourself, for here I am, and I've come so far. Are you the answer that I've been waiting for all of my life? Oh, show yourself. Let me see who you really are. Come to me now. Open your door, and don't let me wait even one moment more. Oh, come to me now, O Lord. Open your door, and don't let me wait even one moment more. And then part 2 came later. Then, at last, this world met the ocean, and I was found. My work is now done, so let me step into your world. Let me grow into something new, for you are the one that I have been waiting for all of my life. Unworthy, here I am yours, and my tongue is too dumb to explain it all. So what can I say to those who are searching just like I? For I am in awe and in surrender. I am truly vanquished. So, my Lord, do with me as you will, for I am dumb in this world. I am truly vanquished, just like the sati who throws herself into the funeral fire. I have given myself to you, and I am entranced. Do with me as you will, but never leave me, now that I am found. End of poem. Now that concludes this introductory talk, so let's now return to the question answer session. But I will first take any questions if the audience has any regarding what we just spoke about. No? Okay, let's begin with the form of... Yes, sorry.
You mentioned about choice
Yeah.
in your reading, and I know often when we've had conversations you're saying everything's written, it's all mapped out.
Yes.
So where does the choice element...
These are conditioned choices, meaning that you taking part in your script, you still have to undergo the script. You're still taking part. So let's say the story has been laid out for the actor to play his part on the stage. He still performs the part, even so he's following the script. Therefore, it looks like he's actually acting out in a real time and a real effort, but the script has already been written and the conclusion has already been determined. When you make a choice, you do not know what is written for you. Therefore, you have to proceed according to your best merit possible. So we call this choice, because you just don't know. Now, although the outcome of the choice and the choice you make is written, you do not know that. So therefore, you have to participate as a participant in creation in making that choice and bear the consequence. What we're saying is that if it is in you possible to hand over all those decisions to the Lord, invoke the Lord's grace, because it is written that this time has come for you to do so, then you can utilize that and let the Lord make all the decisions, and therefore there's no karma, there's no consequences of what you do. But again, this is only for those who are able to do so and not for everyone. So what we're speaking here is about both the reality of life on one hand and the ideal on the other hand. Now, if we don't aim for the ideal, then we may miss out in making the right choices and benefiting ourselves, because once we've heard such things, it is in our script to hear. Now, it is in our attitude, our ability, our sanskars to perform that, follow that through and gain the benefit, which is also predetermined. So, in a sense, you have no free will, but because you have to go through your timeline of events, what to do. You can't just stand there and do nothing. So why not make the better choice if you can, and therefore have a better outcome if possible. So that's for your peace of mind, because regardless of what your life is going through, at the end of it, your peace of mind is what matters the most. The actual events come and go, and they're long forgotten. But the state of your mind, as a result of all those impressions left upon it, carries with you from life after life. So as I mentioned earlier, the objects of life, or the things in life, are not real because they disappear. But the impressions they leave behind are real. So therefore, if we have the right attitude in life, and we start proceeding, whether we perform admirably or not so well at it, these create lasting impressions upon us. And that includes the choices we make. If we do not listen to the wisdom of others, and we carry on doing what we've always done, then we're going to suffer the consequences. But if, because it's in our script, we come across somebody who can explain to us how to make a better choice, and we act upon it, then we are the one to benefit. So that is why when the person is ready, I say, test it out and see for themselves. But you're right, you have to be ready in that position to benefit. What we're explaining is that when you are making a choice which is based in ignorance, what is the right way to go about it? So a person who has the capacity to look into the choices they make and the interest to make the right choices, then we have given them a formula, a means that works. But for others who don't, and they just want to make their random choices based upon their sanskars and their past impressions, they have to suffer the consequences of that. So this all information that's given to anybody here in this world, by the saints or by anybody, is for those who are ready and receptive to receive that information. Others, it is mere curiosity or some nice sayings to quote, but they don't actually follow it through. You understand? Yeah.
Yeah, you say that it will be given to those who are ready.
Yeah.
But there's many who are not initiated, on no path, and they all have, a lot of them have inner experiences. So what makes them ready?
No, it's what we mean is ready to learn, ready to listen. When somebody's receptive to information and they take it on board and follow it through, then that person is said to be ready. If other people sit there out of curiosity, listen to a speech about how to do a particular thing, but then go off and carry on doing whatever was done, and they said, oh, that was quite nice, but it's for me for another day, then that is also their destiny and fate. So that's what we mean by ready. Some people are ready to listen, and some people not. For example, masters have historically given so many talks, so many books are there, so much information is online. Why aren't we all perfect? Because not everybody is ready. Guru Nanak said that roughly 10% of the creation only will be receptive. 90% will not. So you can imagine everything that is said is for those 10% who are ready to learn but just want to know how. So when you go to a teacher in the school and you're ready to learn a subject, they tell you what to do to learn this subject to pass the exam, and you follow them because you trust them, yeah, and you pass the exam. But if you're not in the school, you don't go to the school, how would you ever encounter such information? How would you ever learn? So not everybody's in a position to go to the school, follow the teacher and pass the exam. So we're all at different stages in life. So all spiritual information is aimed at those who are ready to embrace it.
Yeah, but ultimately, the aim is to know the truth, is to go within.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the real readiness to know that.
Yes,
going.
but not everybody knows that firstly, and secondly, even if they know it, ready to practice it. So we say meditate, go within, connect with the Shabad within. This is all conceptual to most people, but some people are ready and they're fired up already inside. They've done all the hard work of preparing themselves for this, sometimes over many lifetimes, so even over this lifetime, because of their experiences of suffering and difficulty, and they want to know the truth for themselves. That yearning builds within them until it becomes a need, not a curiosity. When it becomes a need, you cannot help but follow it. You are compelled to follow it. This is not just like you're compelled not to follow it when you're not ready. When you're ready, you're compelled. And this leads you to take that action that brings about a result. So in fact, spirituality, like everything else in life, is need-based. When it becomes a need, you'll do it. If it's not a need, it's a curiosity.
But those who are not on this path or similar path are having experiences. So
There are different types of experiences. There are mental experiences, there are higher spiritual experiences, there are all sorts of experiences. Everybody who's human being and focuses their attention somewhere in whatever path they follow will have some sort of experience. What we're talking about here is the ultimate experience, the highest experience, to attain union with the ultimate beloved. So that requires a specific method of understanding and learning, just like in order to pass the exam in a university you have to attend the lectures and follow the direction of the syllabus. So there is a syllabus, let's say, a spiritual syllabus or a spiritual method by which the saints say guarantees you direct and quickest and safest access to the highest kingdom of Supreme Lord.
I understand that this path is about obtaining the highest truth, but before you reach that highest truth, you have to start at a lower experience, don't you? It's like going up the ladder.
Of course, when you go to school, when you're young, you start off in a nursery, then you go to lower school, then you go to higher school, then you go to college, then you go to university. There are stages that you go through, and these stages are called our journey. So people at various parts of their journey. So when somebody who's ready to learn, ready to listen, ready to follow, comes into contact with the information that supplies what they need to do so, then naturally they take to it. Whereas a person who's not, and they're interested in lower experiences, they want some worldly benefits, some improvements in their life and well-being, some magical powers even, or just some inner visions of something just to entertain them, then these people are after curiosity or an entertainment, and they're not really sincere seekers. Because to be a sincere seeker, you have to do so no matter what the cost. Kabir mentions quite clearly that only those who sincerely, persistently, no matter what the cost, pursue the truth, then that truth will be laid before them. But what makes such a person that way inclined? Because they have already gone through all the stages that you're speaking about in previous births, and maybe even in this lifetime, where they have started off in the lower paths, realized they wanted more, and kept on going. Because it's need-based wants more until you're satisfied. So if somebody's following a particular religion and they're satisfied with the cultural aspects of life, they say, okay, I'm happy with this. I don't really want any more. That's fine for them. They'll have their own experiences within that constraint, within that limitation.
So are you saying that all those books written out there about the astral, the causal, people having inner experiences, doing podcasts and talking about their experiences, that it's just pure curiosity?
No, it's their level of attainment. They're speaking about what they have attained. And there's two parts. Either they don't know that there's more than that, or they're not interested to know more than that because they're happy with what they've got.
But they're still having experiences. What I'm trying to get at
Yes,
here is...
they have their own experiences, personal to them. No two experiences are alike. Don't go by experiences like that. Each one of us carries our own set of life adventures and personal experiences that guides us, along even with our own personal experiences with the Holy Master or the Lord. You can't compare and look around at others because that's misleading. You will not understand your own particular journey by looking at somebody else's journey because we're all unique. There are some general guidelines, like for example, we are multi-dimensional beings, meaning we exist in different planes of existences from a lower to a higher state. Yes. And there are many factors that govern the physical creation and, from the wonders of technology and science, and there's many philosophies that we can explore in our journey and adventure. And they're all fine because according to one's level of attainment and understanding, they will take to a particular thing. So they will follow that through and they'll reach a certain level and be happy with that until that feeling within them says, I want more. Something is missing. How many people have said that they felt that calling, something's missing in their life? They have it all. They have the home, the wealth, the wife, the cat, the dog, the car, but they're still missing something. Why? Why should they get that feeling within them? Another poor person would say, are you mad, guy? You got everything. What we dream for is what you got. We're happy with that. But he said, no, I don't know, I can't help myself. I've got something inside me. And it's this something inside you that pulls you for more. And it is for those people who want more that all these higher truths are spoken about.
What words would you offer those who are frustrated on this path? Like,
persist.
dying for experiences?
Persist with it. Persist with it with the right attitude. We've just spoken about in the talk. What is the attitude? One should have a singular objective. The primary objective in life should be that truth and that knowledge, and to see for themselves. They should want verification, validation of what they've learnt about for themselves. But what they're doing about it, simply standing there and protesting and not doing anything, is not going to feed you. For example, you're hungry. There's a recipe book, and you stand in front of it protesting. I want the food, I want the food. I've got the recipe book. I'm reciting the recipes over and over again. But why am I not satisfied? You need to do the practice. So when the time comes, and that so-called desire or frustration overrides everything else, believe me, you will take the action. I won't have to convince you. But until then, you have one foot in the world and one foot in the spiritual camp. So then, which one wins? So one day is a sunny day, one day is a rainy day. Sometimes you're into the world, sometimes you're into the spiritual camp. Therefore, you're not sincere in anything. You don't accomplish either well. But eventually, over time, constant exposure to what we call suffering or the experience of life lead you one way or the other. Then as you're led, you take action in that level. And therefore you attain a goal, right? And then you pat yourself on the back and take the credit for it. But where did that feeling arise in you to take serious action, as opposed to just saying you want to take action? Yeah, that's a big difference. That feeling comes by grace and your timeline of events, because everything is predetermined. So if you sit there persistently seeking within you, what you feel within you is more a kind of guide to where you're at. So let's say you're persistently seeking the truth. That doesn't mean you're going to get the truth. It tells you where you are on this journey in life. Because if you have that craving within you, the Lord has placed that within you. Because it's telling you now to take a different direction and to start moving in that direction. You can't do anything really about it because you don't know what to do next. But what you can do is recognize that this feeling exists within you, and so with the vast amount of information out there going on, you absorb only what is relevant to your objective. So when we have an objective in our heart, we naturally only follow what's relevant to that objective. All other information is just curiosity, isn't it? So this is how the spiritual journey works. It's not that the talks can convince anybody. It's that the information is laid there so they can park it in their mind and say, okay, I heard about that. And then later on, months, years later, maybe in the next birth, they come back and feel that pull. They start feeling, wow, that feeling I had, that there's some information somewhere. Let me look at that again now. And let me see. And now they're ready to follow it. Now they're ready to make progress. They're not just saying it. They are sincerely and earnestly and persistently, as Kabir Sahib says, ready. So this readiness becomes a need. And when we need something, we are compulsorily obligated to satisfy that need. Yeah? For example, when you are hungry, it becomes a need and you need to eat. Otherwise you could walk past all the food stores and do nothing for you. But suddenly hunger overtakes you and you run for one. Why that time? Why then? There was all these wonderful food stores before as you're walking in the marketplace. Now suddenly you decide, let me settle on this one and eat. Because the need has come within you. Spirituality is no different. It's need-based. When the need comes within you, you'll hunger and thirst for the truth. And it will become part of your very being. You cannot help yourself. Just as you cannot help yourself to ignore it when you're not ready. You'll think, okay, that's interesting, but not for now.
So if you're not having any experiences and you're not feeling that need What do you do?
then the time's not there yet.
So what other like spiritual markers can you look out for that you are progressing?
Everything, every level that you experience, all the things you're experiencing in life, even your lack of, is a marker. So if you're having certain level of desire, but not yet need-based, then okay, you're somewhere along the line. Compared to, say, a worldly person who's a drug lord and all he wants to do is make loads of money and he has no interest in seeking the truth. So you're a little bit better than them. When we talk about this hierarchy of schooling, what level of school are you at? Right? It just depends on what you're receptive for, what level of learning you're receptive.
You just feel sometimes that you're just like stuck and nothing's changing, nothing's moving.
If you are sincere to change, you will be overwhelmed by that. If you're merely interested in it at a superficial level, then it will glance your mind for a while. But then you need a slap. This is where suffering comes in. Because when you get a slap, it forces you that way. Say, okay, I get it now. I'm going to do this. I'm not half-hearted anymore. I'm not unsure. I know I've got to do this. Right? And that's how it usually works. That's why suffering exists in the world. And what's the point of having a world of suffering? Without suffering, nobody would want to leave here. Everybody will stay here forever and will never know their true glory. Because of suffering, we are ushered along the path. Right? And then we are then naturally, consequently thinking about getting out of that suffering. And therefore, what do we do to get out of that suffering? We take the credit for all of this, but actually it's the slap that made it happen. In the beginning, we assume that we're in control of everything. Yes, we've made this good move. I've taken this on board through that suffering and so on, and I've made these right decisions and so on. It's fine. It's okay for the mind to do that because the mind needs that kind of ego support to keep it motivated. But once you get to a certain level, then you realize this is all orchestrated. And you look at the marvel of the twists and turns that got you there, and you just marvel at it. You're not disappointed or upset. You're just, wow, how clever the design was. And each time I thought I was making a decision and doing something for myself, making progress, actually, it was a slap of the Lord that was doing it. So slap on one hand, wisdom on the other.
So all the frustration and the feeling of being stuck
is a good sign. It means that you're on the verge of becoming a need. So enjoy it and build upon it. Yeah, let's see if you can build upon it until it becomes a need. Then that frustration turns into action. Otherwise, you're at that turning point, not quite yet.
You can feel depressing sometimes.
These are all suffering is good, because the more depressed you feel, the more likely you are to find a solution. Yeah, if you don't suffer, you won't seek a solution to life. So suffering is good. Welcome it and embrace it, and say, okay, now that I'm feeling this frustration, what should I do with it? Then that little voice in you says, meditate, follow the scripture, follow the example, do it. But then your other devilish mind says, no, I've still got some mileage in me. I want to enjoy this world a little bit more. I want to be naughty for a while. Okay, have this game playing. Yeah, you can play good cop, bad cop in your head, right? But eventually one will win. Hopefully the right one. Yeah, okay, let's continue on with the questions.
Ready for the questions?
Yes.
Okay. The theme again for this satsang is how to follow the spiritual path correctly. I've got a few questions around the spiritual journey, and I think some of them you probably answered just.
Okay.
Here we go. What is the significance of a teacher or guru in one's spiritual journey?
Well, as I mentioned, if you want to study and learn a subject, you need to have a source of information that you can rely upon. Same in spirituality. If you want to know the spiritual truth up to a certain level that you're ready for, then you need to seek out a teacher to help you in this endeavor, in this practice. And if you are satisfied with the level of teaching that teacher gives you, then he's like your guru. He becomes your salvation point up to that level. So it is very important in any subject in life, whether it's spirituality, worldly or otherwise, to find a teacher who's competent in your eyes to teach you to the level you want. So there's varying factors here. Firstly, they have to be competent in your eyes, depending on your comprehension of what truth is at that time. So you'll think, okay, I want this level. Secondly, you have to be ready in a position karmically to meet such a one, to have that fulfilled, you see. And then you have to have the right attitude to follow the instruction. So you're not just a wannabe, you're a doer. There's lots of wannabes in the satsang, but very few doers. Yeah. So the teacher is absolutely necessary in all walks of life, without question.
Thank you. This ties in with what you were saying. How should one approach the concept of surrender in their spiritual journey?
Surrender, I would say, is the end stage. You don't start with surrender. It's the end. And firstly, to surrender, you have to have something to surrender to. Now, depending on your level of spiritual attainment, again, selecting the relevant level of path that appeals to you and you surrender to it, you gain the benefit of that, whatever it may be. It could be just an astral level path. But if you surrender to it and follow it through, you'll attain the astral level. Then if you choose something higher, the causal level, Brahman, for example, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, you can surrender to them and you attain their level. So surrender as a concept is dependent upon your level of desire for truth. What truth are you prepared to follow right now? Right? So then you will approach what's necessary to surrender yourself to that, or get to the point where you follow it, and that will eventually lead to surrender, because even that is very difficult. People who follow even low-level paths, like say some base religions or something, they don't really surrender to it, because if they did, they will attain the level of their teacher. Yeah, if you surrender to the teacher and you absorb everything they say, you become like them. Yeah, and that's the whole point, that they die you in their level of attainment and you become like them. The disciple and the master become one. So surrender is the end game. Approaching surrender is just follow your heart, follow what your desire is, what level of attainment you really want, and then find somebody competent in that to surrender to. Because when you have a teacher, then you have to obviously surrender your ignorance to them and say that they know better than you and adopt what they're saying to follow what you want to attain. So they have something to offer, you like what they're offering, so that's a way of surrendering. Like even when you go to college and you surrender your ignorance to your teacher, right? Then they start teaching you. You have faith in them. You learn everything they say to the exclusion of everything else, because you believe that what they're saying will get you to the goal you want. But first you have to have a goal. Then you can find the appropriate teacher, and then you can surrender yourself in a way, or give yourself to them to learn. But surrender is the end game. What we mean in spiritual surrender is you give up everything about yourself and you become them. So you're indistinguishable from the teacher or the guru.
So are you saying that when you get that pull,
Yeah,
you either get the pull, you don't surrender because it's a pull?
it's just a pull at the beginning. You're not surrendered yet.
Yeah, got you.
Surrender is to become the other being,
Yeah.
to become like them.
Because you either get the pull or you don't get the pull.
Yeah, when the pull comes, you have to do something about it.
Yeah.
I don't need to convince you.
Yeah.
Yeah, then all I need to do is supply you with the information you need to do something about it. Then you become receptive or ready.
Thank you. How can we discern between genuine teachings and distractions on the spiritual path?
You see, in this journey, which is an adventure filled with dramas, as Guru Nanak said, the entire creation is simply a drama staged in a dream. And if that's the case, then even following the spiritual path is fraught with adventures, dramas, and sometimes misinformation. And it's really difficult for you to know at the beginning what is right and what is wrong, because if you're not already highly developed, you don't have that innate wisdom to recognize. So it's easy for me to say, from say a higher standpoint, to say, okay, use your inner wisdom or your innate intuition to know what is right and what is wrong, because you haven't got that developed yet. So the answer is you can't really know what is a distraction and what is genuine. All you can do is follow what you like. Yeah, the level of understanding that appeals to you, see how far it takes you. It takes you to a certain level, then you matter, okay, that's not really what I wanted now. I want something more. Then you come across something else and you make progress. So that's the only way you can do it. You cannot know.
I'm just thinking there, because I'm thinking that they're probably genuine at that stage, but not for what you ultimately want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't even know what is
Yeah.
possible. Firstly, you don't know what is possible for you. Secondly, you haven't reached that stage where you can distinguish those who take you there and those who don't. How would you know? Yeah. So the only way is to go through it. So this is why we say life is an experience, live it. Because you literally have to go through it, learn the lessons along the way, brush it off and move on. Every step along the journey is informational and is progressive. So you never waste life. In the human form, life is never wasted. There is always something to learn, even if it's a simple lower level of learning that people undergo, and maybe there are others living in the human form who are on a higher level of learning, coexisting on the same planet. So this is a remarkable place because we have all levels of attainment in this same place. But for those who have attained a very high level, the lower level, or those almost in an animal state, will look at them and just think, oh, yeah, that's noble, that's great. They all recognize that they're a great and noble being, but they say, not for us. We want to enjoy still.
Sure.
Yeah?
Thank you. What role does meditation play in effectively following the spiritual path?
Well, I've read quite a lot about that. I've mentioned just earlier, very much so. Because if the high truth is contained within you, within your consciousness, or within consciousness per se, then this consciousness is not of this world. If consciousness has created this world and everything in it through the Shabbat, then it's natural for you to want to connect with this consciousness in the form of the Shabbat, the manifestation of that creative power, in order to find the truth of everything. So meditation allows you to connect with this until, in a formal way, and then contemplation allows you to connect with it 24/7. So meditation leads to contemplation. But that is the only way by which you can connect with this higher truth. Because the very practice of meditation is focusing your attention on your higher self. Therefore your consciousness, which is the origin of all your experiences. So therefore, meditation is the only means that allows you to do that. Anything external, where you're reciting something, walking on pilgrimages, fasting, or doing some sort of ritual, that's not going to connect you to your higher consciousness. You're performing a ceremonial ritual, yeah, for the pleasure of the mind, who's outward looking.
It might
It's
give
not-
you an experience, but it won't give you.
It'll give you an
that.
experience of some
Yeah.
sort of pleasure or satisfaction, but not higher spiritual experience.
Yeah. Okay, next question. How can we cultivate compassion and service as part of our spiritual path?
Naturally, they're the consequence of following a spiritual path. Because if you're a true seeker and you're seeking to be the best version of yourself, then naturally compassion, forgiveness, love and all come as a consequence. You don't start with that. It comes as a consequence. You can't suddenly decide, I should be more compassionate, so I'm going to go out there. You're bound to fail. But if you start doing a spiritual practice that empowers within you your higher wisdom for right thoughts, right action, right speech, then naturally the compassion comes. It's not the other way around. You can't read it somewhere and say, right, I'm going to be humble or I'm going to be compassionate. You won't. You might trick people for a while. You might even trick yourself, but it won't last.
Sure, thank you. What are the common obstacles faced on the spiritual path and how can we overcome them?
I would say the most common obstacle is the mind. The mind, which is the imposter of ourselves, has taken over the soul and controls every aspect of our life now. And if our attention is focused on the mind, self, the character self, and not looking for the soul self, the reality of ourselves, then that becomes an obstruction, because the mind cannot take us back to our true home. The mind is the barrier that we must overcome, because the mind is born of illusion. And because it's illusion, anything we do focusing on illusion, whether it's ceremonial, ritual, or anything, or even a so-called spiritual practicing, focusing on mindfulness on the mind, is all illusory and does not take us to higher states. So the mind is the single most obstruction that we have to overcome. And therefore the saints or a competent guru or teacher can tell us how to do this. Meditation is the way, as well as not creating more difficulties to make the mind in turmoil. So the practical aspects of living the pious life is simply to create less turmoil in our life. And once we're a bit at peace with the mind, we can start focusing on higher things. But if our mind is in constant turmoil, I could tell you as many things as possible to reach higher states of consciousness. You can do them because you haven't got that peace of mind. So we need to have a peace of mind. So the spiritual path has two things. It has teachings, or let's say practices that keep the mind at peace on one hand, keep it out of the way. And then the Lord, or your yearning, that higher feeling within you, becomes empowered by the Lord's grace. Because you're taking the action, the grace comes in to reward you with empowerment of the soul. Not that you can do it, but there's all grace. Then that pulls you home. So your job, let's say there's any job for a spiritual practitioner, is to keep the mind quiet and entertained in a harmless way that doesn't obstruct your progress. Then you can enjoy the progress which is by the Lord's grace alone.
And I think, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think that's the thing where a lot of people probably fall down, that control of the mind to quieten it down, to then do the meditation.
Well, the precepts are there. If you're not disturbing the mind, if you're living the right way, then the mind becomes at peace. So the whole idea of following the precepts or the principles that have been laid down by the masters to do no harm and so on, naturally the consequence of that is a peaceful mind. And if the mind is at peace and satisfied, then it's a do-gooder. Yes, it's all great. Yes, it's ego. But in this case, the ego is okay, because what you're trying to do is make yourself feel better, that you're a better human being, a noble human being. As long as you don't go to the extreme of arrogance, right, but you just feel proud of yourself, that's fine. It's okay, because that's keeping the mind out of the way. Meanwhile, as reward for this, the Lord gives grace, right? So the more effort you give to creating that peace of mind and that following the way of do no harm, not upsetting the creation or yourself in any way, the more grace the Lord gives you to pull you home. You see? But in the books, they make it as if you're the one who's attaining all this by yourself. And the reason for that is for the mind's sake. The mind wants to feel that it's in control. The mind never wants to lose control. When was the last time somebody else said, yes, I'll be controlled by somebody else? Nobody likes to be controlled by anybody else.
True.
The nature of the mind is to be in control. So, by making it look like it's in control, right, whilst the Lord is doing the work behind the scenes, is the best way to progress spiritually. And this is a little secret that has been used throughout the ages, and all the gurus and lords know this. But when the disciple is doing well, then they pat them on the back and say, yes, very well done, you're making good progress, well done. Because the mind needs that to keep happy. But luckily, spiritual progress has got nothing to do with the mind. Because it was based upon the mind's ability to follow things through correctly, nobody would be home, nobody would get there. The mind is inherently imperfect. So it can take trillions of years would not make the mind perfect. Because it's inherently designed to be imperfect. And because it's imperfect, it acts as a barrier between you and that perfect truth. So, whilst you're keeping the mind controlled somewhat by following your spiritual practice, obedience to your master, doing your meditation, everything, on one hand, the Lord, by grace alone, not because of your effort, is pulling you home, secretly. So you make progress, which you then witness. First in the levels of the mind, as you raise your attention of the mind higher and higher, and then you're free of the mind as soul, and you see your reality, you become aware, rather than having an experience of duality. You are now in a state of awareness, which is a different type of experience altogether compared to the mind realms. But all of this you enjoy. So the idea is you enjoy the benefits given to you by the Lord's grace by helping with the mind state. So it's a very good system for human beings to make progress without really having to do too much about it. You shouldn't be worrying about your progress at all. The only thing you should concentrate on is keeping the mind satisfied and happy whilst letting the progress grow.
So the idea of these satsangs is to satisfy the mind,
Yes.
to get on with.
Yes.
Right.
The idea of all instruction is for the mind. The soul does not need instruction of any kind.
Yeah.
It doesn't need any holy texts, books. It doesn't even need ceremony, ritual, fasting, pilgrimage, nothing. This is all to do with the mind. Why? Why is the mind such a big deal? Because you wholly associate with the mind.
Yeah.
When you look in the mirror, you look at yourself and your character. You say, this is me. You do not see the real you. So because you are so identified with the you, we have to find some way of keeping this false you out of the way, whilst the real you is awakened and gradually pulled home by the grace of the Master. Now, because the character you have adopted in this life is part of this game, because after all, you have assumed a character role of the mind, the character. So why not make this fun too? So the Lord, in his infinite wisdom, or glory, or yourself in your infinite wisdom, have made certain levels of attainment for the mind too. So the mind can spiritually progress within its own realm to a point where it can pat itself on the back and say, well done, because it's fun. Actually, the entire creation is created as fun, despite our feelings otherwise sometimes. It's based upon love. They call it love, but it's really glorification of the truth and the power of the Almighty, and it's done in a way of entertainment. Like adventure and drama is entertainment. We like to watch these things on the movies, and we call it entertainment. Another person might think that's not entertainment, that's miserable, but you find it entertaining. In the same way, when the soul descends into the creation, it takes on a particular mind for entertainment purposes. It is entertained by that. So therefore, going back home has to be entertaining too. So therefore, the mind is involved in this. And the entertainment for the mind is forever gaining progress within the mind's thinking and abilities, and then patting itself on the back saying, well done. Yeah, that is pleasurable for the mind. But eventually you're going to discard it all. You're going to leave the entire, no matter what you've attained by the mind state, you disregard it. The moment the soul separates from the mind becomes dormant. Yeah, like electricity, cut off from the car becomes just a heap of metal and junk. But the moment you put the engine on and you get electricity flowing through it, it becomes alive. Same thing as the mind. You can dress up your car, you can do whatever you like to it, make it the most wondrous car in the world. Turn off the juice and it's gone, it's finished. It's just a hump of metal. It can do nothing for you. It just stands there. You can beat it with a stick, you can talk to it, you can kick it, it won't do anything. But turn the juice on, suddenly it becomes your ally. The mind is exactly the same. The soul is the juice, the electricity that powers the mind. So the mind is just an add-on tool that the soul has used to have an experience in creation. Therefore, it is not the real you. So, but how to get past this? The fun is to get past the false you and discover the real you. We all like these type of movies where the princess has been kicked out of the castle as a baby, is born into a peasant family somewhere in the village, waiting years and years, and then suddenly the minister comes from the king and says, right, we're ready to bring her back home, but we have to convince her that she's a princess. And she said, no, but that's my family, this is all I've known.
Yeah.
He said, no, you have the secret seal. You seal this necklace about you, this is from the king. He said, oh, but I didn't, nobody else has told me that, right? Prove it to me. He said, look, trust me, come with me and I'll take you to the court of the king eventually. So in time, slowly this trust is built, like between master and disciple, right? Build a trust so that you follow them ever more and ever more deeper into unknown territory, until there you stand before the king. And he says, welcome, daughter, back home. You have always been my child, and here's the circumstances of your birth. Everything is revealed. And then you say, I am found.
I like that. It's a nice, pretty picture. But for some reason, we're still in our mind.
Yeah, but this is, I'm explaining to you an idea, a concept that actually is true.
Yeah.
But you have to now realize it. Simply writing it down as a script is not your realization. It is just conception. But once it becomes your reality, it's no longer a concept. It becomes your knowledge, your personal knowledge. So people who have attained this state, or knowers of the truth, these people speak from direct knowledge. They don't need books to tell them this is happening then, they don't need anything like that. If a person who claims to be enlightened has to refer to a book to understand the inner workings and the workings of life, then run away from them.
Yeah.
Because that such a person doesn't actually know.
Because
Or if they're a parrot, simply parroting what others have said.
Yeah,
There
because
are
they
many
would have
parrots
experienced
out there.
it themselves, wouldn't they?
Then they can say it in their own way. They can also say it with authority and conviction. When somebody directly knows something, there's no unsureness in what they're saying. They know for sure. You know?
Thank you. What are some signs that indicate we are progressing on the spiritual path?
Becoming more noble as a human being. As you become a more noble human being, which we all understand what that is, then we are definitely making progress on the spiritual path. Because that nobility comes only as the mind elevates itself. We spoke about earlier. Higher mind is very noble. It's Krishna consciousness, Christ consciousness. How great were they? Yeah? So the closer we get to that level of consciousness, the more we change as a person. Our attitude becomes better. We embrace the do no harm principle really well. We have this yearning for the true seeking inside. We don't take life too seriously. We don't seem to form so much attachments. And where we had attachments, we seem to be letting go of them. There are so many ways that each one of us can experience our own personal growth and development on the spiritual path by recognizing our greater nobility and our disassociation with the gross world.
Is it a case that you just have more peace within yourself?
Naturally, that the consequence is peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, this is the last question regarding the spiritual journey. What is the best way for initiates to follow the spiritual path?
Like I said, they can still become noble human beings. Because whether you're initiated or not, the journey is more or less the same for the first part. It doesn't make any difference, right? You still have to become from a human animal to a human being. We've laid down the guidelines of what is expected of a human being. Work towards that. It's not time wasted. Because then when you get initiated, whether in this life or the next, you'll take off from where you left off. It's not that you have to start all over again.
Sure. Yeah, because I think that's the reason for the question. They're probably thinking, I'm not an initiate, so what about me then?
Don't worry about being initiated or non-initiate. Just become a noble human being, and you might be even better than some of the initiates out there. Right? Don't think that being initiated means you're a better person. No, it just means you've been put on the path. Your time has come. Now you're able to do two things: become a noble human being and attain spiritual enlightenment. Whereas for a non-initiate, they can become a noble human being, but they haven't got the means to open the Dwasan door, the 10th door within, to allow them higher spiritual awareness. But that doesn't matter, because the first part of any initiate struggle even is getting to the point of getting themselves to the door, which a non-initiate can do.
Sure. They'll be glad to hear that, I'm sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to go on to spiritual practice and growth questions. What are the essential principles that guide a correct spiritual practice?
Again, how do you know what is correct? You know, when you reach a certain point and you've crossed all the illusion of this world of mind and Maya, then you can look back and know what is correct and what isn't. Up until then, you don't know what is correct. So, where do you feel the pull? Your affinity. We all have affinity for a particular teacher or a particular teaching. You have to follow your heart. You have to follow your affinity. And once you follow your affinity for something, then that becomes correct for you until you learn better. So don't try to spend too much time analysing. See, that's another negative part of the mind. The mind likes to tear everything apart and analyze and dissect it. And it spends his whole time doing that and gains nothing.
Yeah. True.
So really, you follow your heart. Wherever pulls you, naturally, investigate it, check it out. Because by checking out, you'll know what is correct for you and not.
Thank you. How can we cultivate discipline and consistency in our spiritual practices?
Again, this comes with need. If the need is there, nobody would ask that question because they automatically know what they want to do. If they're saying that they want to cultivate discipline and persistence, then they're not there yet. All they can do is throw it out there. If they're initiate or non-initiate, throw it out to the Lord or the Master and say, please, I would like to, in my mind, my higher mind now, because all discussions are with mind, remember, not the soul. I would like to have this consistency and discipline on the spiritual path, but something obstructs me. Please help. Okay, this is a noble inquiry. And if you persistently keep saying that, because that persistent thought is within you, right, and you're addressing that thought, then eventually you'll get it.
Sure.
Persistence is the key.
Because they probably read things, but they know they're not there yet, and they feel a bit flaky and think.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Everybody, I assure you, everybody, even the enlightened ones, have been through every stage you're going through. They didn't somehow born with a miraculous shortcut. No. Even they went to hell.
Yeah.
The Buddha himself, in recounting his past lives, said many times he was in hell before he became the Buddha. And he only went to hell because he did very bad things. So he went through all the stages of experience up to Buddhahood. So if the Buddha had to go through that, what about you?
Yeah.
Don't think that you're any better or worse than them. You've gone through everything. So you're at a certain stage now. This is why when you look at, say, in a group of Sangat, and you see people at various levels of spiritual practice, don't be jealous or envious or be arrogant or proud about where you're at in this path, because everybody has to go through a certain journey. You should always look to those ones who are better than you, naturally, because you want to go upward, not downward. So you admire the ones who are better, you hang out with them and you learn their secrets.
When you say better, what do you mean by better?
Who've progressed more.
Okay.
They are more steadfast. They are more disciplined.
Noble.
They are more noble.
Okay.
They have greater knowledge. They have greater peace of mind. These are all the things you want. You hang out with them because they can impart that upon you through association of grace. So just by making a choice, so this is where choice comes in. You choose to seek the company of the noble ones rather than the others. Immediately that invokes grace, just because you made that choice.
Sure. Thank you. I was just thinking, because a lot of people do like to go with the more edgier people, the more controversial, the more the bad boy.
That's because they like to have a bit of fun. They haven't. They're not done yet with this world.
Yeah.
It's okay for them.
Yeah, because that's where they are.
Yeah, it's okay. Masters never judge. The enlightened ones never judge because they know the entire show is evolving from beginning to end in a predetermined way. That means everyone, including the appearance of the masters, is scripted. Even what the master does is scripted.
Sure.
The master does not do anything outside the script either. If the thinking is that this master somehow will wave a wand and make everything better, it doesn't happen like that. The master cannot break the law.
Yeah.
The law of the universe, for it to evolve correctly, is to follow the law. So the master gives instructions to those who are ready to listen. Those ones who are ready to listen will lap up the words. Those who are not will say, oh, it was really nice, I liked his tie, he was wearing a nice tie, or his hat was good, or you look at those shoes he was wearing. They'll say all kinds of things about the master, but they won't remember anything he said. Yeah? And most of the time, I used to go a lot to Haynes Park and listen to master discourses, and I was all at Babaji of Bias's discourse in Haynes Park in England. And I used to be really amazed that within 5 minutes of master leaving, all kinds of other conversations were taking place other than what was just spoken about. And I said, hold on a minute, there were some profound bits of wisdom here. Didn't that hit you? They said, we don't even remember him saying that. I used to say, what about this question? Oh, we don't remember that. But they'll remember when he made a joke. When he made a joke with somebody or made fun, they remember that. So it tells you where
That's
the
where
mind
they're at.
is.
Yeah.
Same master, but
Yeah.
different receptivity.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
How can we integrate spiritual teachings into our everyday life?
By involving them in everyday life. If you simply, the question answers itself. If you simply involve spiritual teachings in everything you do, by looking for the deeper meaning of it all, or marveling at it all, or being grateful to the one who's giving all these experiences to you, or are seeking to understand a difficult experience from that one, then you're involving the Lord. If you involve the Lord, even if you don't know what the Lord is, but you have that feeling within you that there's a greater power, then involve that greater power in everything you do, and ask for the truth. Ask for the truth and the meaning of everything. That's how you can involve. Also simply ask to do the right thing when it comes to make choices, which is the best choice. Again, if you have that capacity, that interest to want to better yourself, improve yourself, or to know, then naturally you'll follow the necessary procedures to do so.
It ties in with the next question. What is the importance of self-inquiry and how can it be practiced daily?
Yeah. I mean, again, this self-inquiry is a little higher state. The religions don't often teach this. They're more about cultural followings. So self-inquiry is not natural for everybody. In fact, it's a rare in humanity for people to actually engage in self-inquiry. Very few people do it. Whether they're doing it through philosophy, mindfulness, or religion or something.
How are you defining self-inquiry, just so?
Inquiring about who the self really is, who you really are, what you're all about, why you're here, where you come from, where you're going, the usual, right? So, but most people don't. If you were to stand, say, outside a Christian church, and you say, in this sermon you had today of an hour of service or 90 minutes of service, how many times did you think about who you really are, where you come from, what is your relationship with this Jesus character that you follow? They'll say, we never thought about that. He said, we were just mostly thinking about the cooking, the dinner at home. When I get home, I've got to do this dinner. Or no, I've got to meet my friend afterwards. You're just going through the motion of attending the service, but your mind was not with it. Or you might like a sermon. You said, oh, that was quite a nice sermon he gave. He gave an example from the Bible. That sounded quite cute. But nobody says, I was self-inquiring. Because they don't. Most religions don't encourage this even. Where in the last time you heard a scripture in most religions saying, yeah, inquire the truth within. Even so, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. How many people look for the kingdom of God within them? They don't. Or dying while living, meaning meditate on yourself. And if thy eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. How many people really think about this? That everything lies within them. It's taught in Christianity, but nobody thinks about it.
I don't know, maybe I'm naive, because I just assume that people who were religious have that aspect of them to think, where did I belong? Because they're looking to something else, like the religion.
A lot of people follow it by default.
Okay.
But some people, I'm not saying everybody,
Yeah.
some people in that genuine, they actually are.
Sure.
But very difficult to find them. Like a needle in a haystack. You have to search hard.
Interesting.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, it's just an observation and a comment based on what Lorraine has just said. I thought it was quite natural for human beings to think, why am I here? I thought it was very natural.
But that's a different level. For example, you'll be surprised, again, if you stand outside a temple or you stand outside a gurdwara or a church, ask all the people coming out, how many times did they really make this sincere inquiry within that setting? It wasn't. It was, look, I've got a problem with my work, or my daughter's going to have a baby, I want to make sure it's okay, or burn a new house. They have every 101 question. You know, Guru Nanak even said when he went to a temple in one of his journeys, and he was to be greeted by a chief Brahmin there who was going to allow him to give a sermon to the Sangat. So the place was full of bodies, but Guru Nanak stood there and was listening to the Brahmin's version of quoting from the Vedas and everything. And then when it's finished, he invited the Guru Nanak to come and do a short talk about, personal enlightenment and so on. And so when Guru Nanak greeted him, he said, thank you. He said, but there's nobody here. And the man was puzzled. He said, but there's so many people, it's packed. What do you mean nobody's here? He said, that one is thinking of his wife, that one is thinking of his child, the other one's got a problem with his farm. He said, nobody's here in the spiritual sense. He said, they're not here. He said, why should I speak to an empty room? And what he was trying to get at to the Brahmin is that although these people were ritualistically attending these things as part of a cultural village event, none of their hearts were there. They were elsewhere. Similarly, if you go to a temple, you like to think, let's say you're that way inclined, you have that question inside you. But you ask, no, you'll be surprised. You ask the average person, yeah, so do you really think about these things? They say, oh, maybe once, years ago or some point. No, we don't think about this daily. This is not our daily preoccupation, which is what we're talking about. No. They're going there, they're focused more, make sure I get this relevant duties done, make sure I bake this cake for the Sanghas, or make sure whatever it is. They're all focused on the ceremonial outward aspects. Nobody's interested in within. And that's why that's generally not taught. In most of these places, they talk about marvels and stories of the deities or the Lord and so on. Nobody talks about, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave you with a statement at the end. Go within and find all this out for yourself. You won't need me anymore, right? The ultimate goal is to search within yourself. Everything's within you. You don't need to come to this grand building. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to listen to me. Nobody says that. But that's the truth. So the whole institution of religions and other establishments is not to inquire within. It's very rare to find somebody who says, yeah. Now, even within that Sangat, that congregation who goes to the religion, one or two may be genuine seekers. One or two. But what satisfaction are they going to get where they're going? They don't know anything else. Yeah.
Is that because like the religion's agenda like to survive?
Yeah.
Because
it's about propagating the culture.
Because if that happened, everyone went within, then you wouldn't.
Then the temples will be empty.
The organisation would die, right?
Yes, there would be no money in it then.
Yeah, I feel like it's ego.
Historically, historically, religions were a means of earning lots of money. They were in fact the richest institutions in any country. Even now, there are certain temples in India which are said to hold trillions of dollars worth of gold locked away in Vault B in a particular area, I won't tell you. Over many, many donations that were given. The whole institution, and even the church is famous in England for being corrupt. The tithes, everything. They were the richest. They were even richer than the King of England. The king would have to go to the church to borrow money to fight the wars, right? That's how rich they were. So naturally, there was something very wrong here about this version of spirituality compared to the reality, what it should be. Yeah, so most people who are going there are part of a community and they want to belong, they want to be accepted. Why would they interfere with that by thinking of complicated things like, why am I here, where am I going, let me find the truth?
But
yeah.
You can do both, can't you?
Very right. Yes, you're absolutely right. What I'm saying is the majority of people do not. Guaranteed. You can try yourself. Go and stand in front. Yes.
Talking about religion, then what was the purpose of Babaji visiting the Vatican with the next master and
this is all symbolic.
Yeah,
because
there has to be a reason behind it.
Yes, there is a reason, which I'd rather not say. This is going to be very controversial.
I'm happy to hear.
But well, no, I know you would like to hear. I'll tell you in private. But I think this is not appropriate for a worldwide audience, right? But masters have to play many roles. Yeah, just like you play many roles. You work. You have a work face. You have your friend's fun face. You have a family face. Yeah, you have to mix and associate with many different peoples in this world, and to do that you have to follow the social norms. Now Babaji doesn't want to upset the social norms and create problems for the Dera or from the movement as a whole, which is already kind of labelled by some organisations as a cult. So why not build bridges by making peace with different organisations, right? But there's more to it than just that, but let's say that's an answer I'm prepared to give you right now.
I believe Babaji handed the Pope some Sant math books.
Yes.
So
the Pope. Okay, let me explain to you something which is going to maybe shock you a little bit. A lot of priests in the Christian religion, including the Pope, have great issues with the Bible as it is today. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the origin of it and the truths contained within it. So the Pope Francis, the current Pope, he is actually seeking, we talk about some people in religions are asking certain questions, pertinent questions, right? But he can't publicly broadcast all that. So remember, wherever the seeker is, wherever the chela is, the master appears, let's say. So it doesn't mean that he's going to initiate him or anything like that, but he's given him the information. The fact that he's met this particular Pope and he's given him these books is an indication of where he is going in time. Not necessarily in this lifetime. Yeah? But there's a significance behind that.
Obviously the Pope knows more than he's telling the public in terms of
everybody, even if you're a Pope, has a personal journey.
Yeah.
Just the fact that the society makes you a king or a Pope or an emperor doesn't make you any different from the other householder. Yeah? Your needs are the same as a human being. It doesn't change with title. I've never seen a human being suddenly say, right, I'm an emperor now, I don't need to eat. I don't need to shit. I don't need to shave. Therefore I'm going to sit here because I'm an emperor. Yeah? No. They have to do everything the same. We forget that. We build them up because they have a status, a title, and we make them more glorious than they are. They're ordinary individuals.
Yeah, I just find it strange that Babaji would visit there and make it publicity.
Well, I've given you a suitable
Considering
answer.
that
Hopefully that answers it for you.
Because the Vatican has a lot of negative history, doesn't it, as well? Like,
What's that to do with the individuals?
they're representing that, aren't they?
No, they're not. They're representing themselves. It is us who decide that an individual represents the entire history of the organisation. No, they don't. They represent themselves. The fact that they are in a particular environment is because those people need help. So, for example, Jesus used to associate with all the lowlifes of his time. With the tax collectors, everybody hated, the villains and the criminals. He used to hang out with them. And the Pharisees, who were these noble Jewish priests, complained, if he's so holy, why is he mixing with a low-life scum? That's how they saw it. And Jesus says, no. He said, they need help. You don't. And they're also willing to listen. You're not. So he mixed with the meek. His whole mission was based upon this. He even said the meek shall inherit the earth. Right? It's exactly this. So you have to understand that things are not always what they seem. And if you put as much effort into your own spiritual progress as you do watching what other people are doing, then you've gone very far by now. I would say don't worry about these things too much. Just say, oh, that's nice. Like most people say, oh, that's nice. The Pope got blessed. That's it. Leave it at that. Yeah, okay. Next
Okay,
question.
carrying on. How can we maintain humility and openness in our spiritual practice?
I'm not sure about openness because actually spirituality is a very personal affair and it's not something to be discussed with others. So it's a very personal and private experience. Humility comes naturally when you make progress on the path. As you realize that everyone is also a son and daughter of God, then naturally become humble before them. You don't see yourself as better than them.
Mm-hmm. What practices can help us stay grounded and centered amidst life's challenges?
Again, keep to the guidelines. Whatever happens, follow the guidelines of your spiritual organisation to the best of your ability, and always seek the truth about everything and the right choices from the Lord. Then you remain grounded automatically.
How do we balance material responsibilities with spiritual aspirations?
You see, as physical beings, there's two parts to us. We have the spiritual part and we have the karmic part or the dharmic part. The dharma means duty. So we're born with a particular role to play in creation. Both are necessary. We have to fulfill our roles diligently and as best as we can with as much vigor as we follow the spiritual path. This is why the Buddha said, walk the middle path, walk the middle road. It means balancing your worldly and your spiritual life. Both are important. If you don't get the worldly part sorted and you don't clear your karmic account, you have to come back to clear that anyway. Secondly, if you don't do it, it will come back and bite you. It will cause complications for you. And then where would you have the time and the ability, the focus to be able to concentrate on spirituality? So by performing your worldly duties to the best of your ability, within the guidelines given by the Lord, which do no harm and so on, then it will make way for you to allow you to spiritually practice. So you must do both equally well.
Sure. Okay, this is the last question relating to the theme, because I'll be going on to off-theme questions. So if anyone's got any other questions after this that relate, have them ready. In what ways can community and fellowship support our spiritual growth?
Like I said, when we are beginning on this journey, by nature, human beings need support. And when you're doing something contrary to the mainstream, you need more support. So therefore, associating with like-minded individuals naturally motivates you and encourages you to attain the objective that you are all aiming for. Because we need that moral support as human beings at the beginning. Until we reach a point of higher mind involvement, then we don't need any support from anybody. We are self-sustaining. But until then, we definitely need support. It's a great help. It's not a must, but it's a great help.
Right, that's the last question. Has anyone got any questions related to the theme of today?
Yeah.
Would you agree that this path is like full of contradictions?
If you look at it from the lower level, it looks like that. Because you have to understand there's two parts here. There's the path of the soul and the path of the mind. They're both enrolled together. So, what is appropriate to the mind is not appropriate to the soul. So if, say, a master or somebody gives an answer based upon mindfulness, that may not be correct or wholly true when it comes to pure spiritual knowledge. So, yes, all spiritual paths, all knowledge from whether it's religions or even Sant carries contradictions. But not really. Because if you understand that there's two parts here, the Jiva and the Atma, or the character the individual's playing, and the soul, their real self, then they require different things. So if somebody's going to answer a question from the point of view of the character, and you say, how can I become a better person? Then all the things related to that are not necessarily going to enlighten you in spirituality, but we try to tie it in together by, for example, saying, if we can keep the mind occupied and calm and peaceful, then the Lord can pull us towards the spirituality. So all talks and discussions are for the mind, not for the soul.
Yeah, the contradictions sometimes seem to add to like the frustration that I mentioned earlier.
Doesn't it add to the fun as well?
Yeah. I mean,
You see,
it's like
in any game, there is a bit of a challenge, an adventure to overcome, right? Now, contradictions only exist if you're not at that level of understanding. So let's say you know that a certain way is right for you. When you hear anything that supports that way, you go for it. Anything that doesn't support that way, you ignore it. It's not a contradiction. But people are at different levels of attainment. Therefore, the type of information you give to one may be totally different to the information you give to another. Because let's say a master also knows what is written for that individual. There's a very famous example in Dera at the great master's time, which Ishwarji often recounts this story, and I'll repeat it here briefly to illustrate this point, but also how there's no contradiction. Everything is correct for the appropriate individual. So in this case, Master was sitting with his committee, and there were some people waiting to ask Master's advice and questions. As was usual in the afternoon in Dera in those days, they'd be queuing outside the door, and the usher would be maintaining the doorway and allowing one person to come in. So it just so happens that Ishwarji was there at this time, so he witnessed this and a few others. So one lady came in and said, please, great master, please help me with my daughter. She wants to go to college and she wants to study, but I think she should get married. You know, it is our tradition in our village that all the young girls get married first and then they can do what they want afterwards, so please advise me. He said, no. He said, I think she should study. He said, why not let her study, right? Why not let her go to college, improve herself? Then there's plenty of time to get married. He said, okay, thank you, Master. Then the next one, immediately afterwards coming, same story. My daughter is at that age now where we need to decide whether to marry. She wants to go to college, and but I think we should get her married. And Great Master says, what business has girls got to do with college? He said, they're there to maintain the home and support the home. He said, she should get married. Now, within the space of 5 minutes, 2 opposite answers were given. But on the face of it, as an onlooker, right, because we don't understand that path is personal. This is the thing. Another thing. It's not global or universal. So, there was a big contradiction. Nobody would disagree that there's a massive contradiction. But not if you look at it from the personal perspective. Master knew exactly what is to come for them. So in a way, he simply directed them to do what they were going to do, what is written for them, by making a statement. Now the onlookers, of course, now each one of those people were very happy with the advice. And they never thought there was any contradiction at all. They said, okay, Master said it, we'll do it. But the onlookers, who didn't have that higher awareness, they actually questioned Master exactly the same way that you're asking. They said, Master, we just witnessed 2 people come in and he gave them totally opposite views. How can this be right? He said, because each one has their own destiny written out. I'm merely encouraging them to follow that.
I can understand contradictions at that level because everyone's going to follow their own karma.
Yes.
One person's meant to go to study, one person... I'm talking about the contradictions at a higher level, like you're told to make effort, but you're not really making effort.
What is the difference between grace and effort? Isn't effort grace? But some people need to hear it as they're in control. So it's like, look, you please make an effort and Master will give you grace. But actually, it's all grace. There's no effort. Yeah? But Masters use these terms for the mind. You have to understand, who are you talking to? If the person feels that they want to be personally involved in this journey, they're not at that level of understanding where they realize the Master does everything and they don't do anything, actually. So, Master says, make an effort. And he gives them the means to make an effort, which is the grace. And then he pats them on the back, saying, well done for the effort. What's the difference between grace and effort? There's only grace. Yeah? But the grace is shaped differently. Grace is the reward, and grace is the effort. Which one? So you can define it in human terms, saying, right, that's an effort, and there's a reward. So, where's the contradiction? It's how we interpret it that is contradictory, not the actual statements. They make sense in their context. They make sense when looked from a higher perspective. But they look contradictory when you're using your intelligence or your emotional mind to interpret it. Yeah? Okay, yeah.
Okay, these are off-theme questions now.
Okay.
First question about creation. Small statement and 3 questions that link to that. As I understand it, when the creation was created, Satgurus created 16 attributes. One of the attributes created the universe in which we reside. So the first question is, what about the other 15? What was their role? Briefly.
Right, okay. This questioner is talking about, I have to put this into context for the wider audience. Yeah, this question is talking about Kabir Sahib's famous book called the Anurag Sagar, in which he laid out the story of creation. So I'll have to give a little bit of background, in order to answer this question in the order specified. I'll have to share various bits of Kabir Sahib's famous book titled the Anurag Sagar, or Ocean of Love, which is his translation, where a detailed explanation of creation, which is where this question has come from, is found relating to this. So, but it's important to note a few things first. The creation explanation found in this book is an allegory in story format, meaning it isn't necessarily a literal account for what happened at the time of creation. Instead, allegories are used to simplify more complex ideas by relating them to things that we can understand, often using personifications and metaphors. That way, it's easier to remember and pass down through generation after generation. So in the past, they use allegories and means or parables as a means to explain complex concepts to ordinary disciples. Now the story goes like this. Satpurush or Satpurusha, which is said to be the first full expression of the absolute or supreme Lord in an active form, right, had the will or desire to create creation, which is inherent in its own manifestation. So it carries that inherent desire to create creation by its own manifestation from its higher self, origin, Anami Purush. So thus through the first Shabad, or power emanating of itself, Satpurush created the realm of Satlok, also known as Sachkhand. From there, with the following Shabads or powers expressed as sound, Satpurush created 16 divine attributes of itself to assist with the rest of the creation manifestation. So Satpurush had to divide itself up into attributes that then would, because of their separation, allow a creation to take place, which is separated from the highest truth of non-creation. Right? I'm trying to explain this as simply as possible. In order to have something exist, you have to have the framework and the means by which something can exist. Okay? We're talking here about states of consciousness now. And these attributes, although in the Anurag cycle they talk about them as divine sons, like their father and son, that's just a way of explaining it. It's not actually literal, yeah, just so we can get away from it. So I'm going to talk about divine attributes, which is a real interpretation. Also created were the Atmas, or the souls, in latent form. So all of us, were also created to inhabit the subsequent creation that was to follow, each possessing the hidden mystery or power of all the 16 divine attributes in them. So the soul itself contains all 16 attributes of Satpurusha within each soul. So the soul itself is a very remarkable creation. So, but that's a subject for another time to go into all of that, what the soul actually is and how it came about and what it represents. Now these 16 attributes which Satpurusha divided itself into are in fact 16 qualities, principles or ingredients, let's say, that were needed in order to create the rest of creation that was to follow. Also, this fact of each soul containing the light of the 16 attributes is a testament to the light which we all carry within our true form. You know, because we all have those 16 attributes in the form of light and sound. Now the story of creation is that it is the fifth attribute in particular that we're most interested in, known as the ego attribute, which this person is referring to. The primary quality or ingredient that creates the lower creation that we currently inhabit is based upon this ego attribute. So this ego attribute, although didn't have the materials of creation, had the desire to have a separate creation from Satgurus. Within Satgurus, it wanted its own creation, but it didn't have the means to do the creation. You understand? Yeah, but it just had the will or the desire. So this fifth attribute or ego attribute was later called Mahakal. So we understand this as a Mahakal or Great Kal, who now resides in the fourth division. But he wanted his own version of creation to live and rule over, you see. So because ego is a megalomaniac thing, it wants to rule. Thus, in order to follow the rule of bhakti or devotion, that is implicitly necessary in order to gain anything new in creation. So this concept of performing bhakti is right at the high level. You know, it's translated down to the human level, but actually bhakti occurs at every level of creation in some form or another. Okay, the mental forms are different in the way we do it here, but in higher forms bhakti is still there, right? And that's another subject of how all the realms kind of function through this bhakti or devotional system, particularly from Parbrahm onwards, because there's no doing necessary. This devotional concept is practiced very differently in the higher realms, because there's no space or time and no doing. Subject for another time. So in order to gain anything new in creation, even at the level of Satpurush and the ego attribute fit, he had to perform bhakti or devotion, because that's the only way to gain something new. Let's just say it's a law that's written there, even at the highest level. So Mahakal did what we call tapas. Tapas is spiritual practices, right? So Kabir calls them tapas, or spiritual practices, for over 70 yugas or ages, right? Giving a kind of timeline. Although there's no time at that point, he tried to give an example of that it must have taken a long time, because here on earth we know a yuga is very long, and if Mahakal had to do 70 yugas worth of austerities or practices, then we know he did a great bhakti, he showed great devotion. So he did this to please Satpurusha, which is his divine creator, so that sufficient merit would be earned to acquire a new moj or wish, right, from Satpurusha, specifically aimed at having the power to create a personal creation. So as the desire element or the ego element, his bhakti was specifically designed to gain a new wish, a new moj, right, new directive from the Lord to have his own creation. So it's selfish in its intent, but nevertheless, because bhakti is the means by which you can attain anything in creation, even something selfish, Satpurusha could not deny him. Even so, Satpurusha knew that Mahakal was going to misuse this power and cause problems for the future souls. He still had to grant it, because that is the law, right? In the sense that there's a means by which things are obtained, and the moment Satpurush was created, so was the law that governs even Satpurush. He cannot go against the law. He cannot have random whims. Yeah? So it's interesting. This is a very interesting concept. Only from nothingness, anami level, can you create any possibility. Once you've created something like a god, like Satpurush, Satpurush is automatically comes along with governing laws. So indeed this worked, as Satpurusha, inherently pleased with the tapas, because he cannot do otherwise, not be pleased, inherently pleased, offered Mahakal a special place in Satlok, later known as the fallen realm, within which its central feature would be the great Mansarava, or lake of enlightenment place, which separates individuality of the third realm from universality of the fourth realm. So in order for the fourth and the third spiritual realms to come into being, one represents individuality of, say, souls. So this is happening in advance. He hadn't had the souls yet, and he hadn't even had the creation material to make the creation. What he gained was the concept or the permission. It's like if you apply for planning permission to build an extension to your home. You haven't got anything yet. You've applied for the planning permission and it's been granted, but there's no extension. So this also happens at this level. So by this austerity, 70 yugas, he gained permission to create a pseudo realm or a false realm within such Khan, which would be divided into two parts. The third realm and the fourth realm, one of individuality and the other one of universality, right? Which now is referred to in Sant Mat. We talk about this whole region as Parbrahm. So, although in current Sant Mat they talk about Parbrahm and Bandha and Gufra as separate, they're actually not separate. The division between them is by something called the Mahasun, and the Mahasun divides the individuality from the universality. But actually it's all spiritual, it's all one, right? So to those, say, of discerning minds, there's a bit of an irony here in a sense, because Mahakal, later known as time in his lesser form, as just Kal, did allegorical tapas for a certain period of time in a realm of creation that is eternal and therefore has no time. So that we can see now the paradox here. On one hand, Kabir is saying that he did this for a period of time, but there was actually no time there. So the 70 yugas are inherently misleading. But they're a way of explaining something, that some great austerity, some great practice was done in order to earn a reward. Okay, let's just leave it at that. So, coming back to the story, Mahakal felt, however, that the Mansarava plane of existence was insufficient for its full natural expression of ego. And so, once again, Mahakal did another set of tapas, another spiritual practices for another 70 yugas. Yeah, it seems to be a common theme, this 70 yugas thing, but we can ignore that, but I'm just quoting what the book says. To receive further, even more remote division of the pseudo-creation within its already existing fallen realm. So it has a fallen realm, but it wanted to create another subdivision, later known as the three worlds of Maya, of illusion. For the grand realm of illusion, which would be divided into three parts, which is causal, astral and physical realms, which at this point only existed in its pre-manifested or latent form. So again, nothing had been created. Yeah, he's only got the planning permission to first have his pseudo realm, then to have his pseudo realm divided up into the two parts, the individuality and the universality of soul, and then to have a further division separated down even more remote, in which illusion would reign supreme. Illusion, in which Kal himself could put his own teaching, separate from the Satgurus, his own misleading, illusory teachings to direct the to come yet inhabitants or souls. So all of this is conceptual. Now Mahakal thus needed, so at this point now, Mahakal needed the materials to actually manifest this lower creation according to the plan, right? Such as the various elements known as tattvas and gunas and so on, right? Which comprise the creation. Then to populate the entire new pseudo-creation, souls or life forms were needed to govern, for him to govern over as well. So he needed these things. So thus again Mahakal did another set of tapas, another devotional practice, right? So that he could ask for these things. Again, Satgurus could not refuse. Meanwhile, the other 15 attributes were enjoying their own self-existence. They were enjoying themselves. They weren't doing anything in particular. They were just enjoying themselves, being part of the manifestation of the creation that was to come. Okay? So in response to this request, Satgurus gave Mahakal the information needed to go to Kurma, which was the second attribute. So Kal was the fifth, Mahakal was the fifth, Kurma was the second one, and Kurma was the largest of the attributes, let's say in scale. Why he's so enormous? Because he contained, again we're using the word he, Kabir addresses them as sons, right? So the appropriate is it, right? But I'm just going along with Kabir's, saying. So because kurma actually means reservoir of creation, meaning all the materials needed to make a creation were in kurma. That's why he's number 2. So after Satpurusha, the Supreme Lord itself, the number 2 was kurma. So the next magnificent attribute, because that controlled the reservoir of creation. So Mahakal went to kurma as instructed to get the materials needed for his creation, to actually make it a reality, from a concept to a reality. However, this was done in a relatively unlawful manner, which I won't go into too much. Kabir goes into quite detail about how he did this by literally ripping it out of him. But because Kal was impatient. Part of ego or time is impatience. Yeah? Impatience itself happens within time. In the spiritual realm, there's no need to be impatient because there's no time. Yeah? The moment somebody's impatient, they want something in time. Get it? Yeah? So, which is another ironic quality. So again, this is where Kabir mentions this impatience in a place that can only exist in time and space, and there was no time and space there. So it's technically incorrect, but it doesn't spoil the story, right? We all love a good story. Now, in addition to kind of all of this, Satpurusha later created the first feminine mate to Kal's masculine authority. So let's say that Kal, in his very nature, is masculine in nature, but not male. Okay, so this is feminine nature and masculinity are slightly different from male and female, but they happen to correspond or translate to that lower down. So, because Kal also said that to govern this creation, to govern this, and to create duality that he wanted to create in this illusory world, the illusory world meant that he was trying to create duality, he had to have duality of himself. He also had to have a male version of himself and a female version of himself. So Satpurusha agreed and created something called Adya. Now Adya means primal or original female, original feminine concept. Yeah, you can ask? No. So to coexist in lower creation with Kal. So now he had his consort, right? And she would provide, or this Adya would provide, the duality and the root seed needed to create life in the lower realms via 84 lakh or 8.4 million varieties of life forms. So she was the means, which later is translated to human giving birth as well. She was the means by which the root seed of the 84 lakh life forms would emanate. Okay? So whilst Mahakal created the structure, the framework, Adya was necessary to allow the souls to come into creation in 84 lakh forms. Yeah? So the souls are all one, they're not divided, but through her, she adds their illusory covering upon them. They were divided into 84 lakh or 8.4 million varieties of forms. Incidentally, Adya in Hinduism is also known as Bhavani, the giver of life, or Adi Shakti, the primal power, or Durga Mata, divine mother. So when you see in Hinduism them praying to this particular deity, that's who it is, although they don't know the full extent of her power. And so on in religions. So now it must be mentioned that these higher regions, that in these higher regions, there isn't actually a male or female polarity though. It's just that when they are translated here into the physical, they create a duality. Because one has feminine characteristics inherent in them, the other has male characteristics, but they're not actually male or female. Hope that point comes across. Like if you were to see Krishna, let's say, Krishna or Shiva or Brahma, although they're portrayed as male, and the sons of Kal, they're not actually male, but they have male qualities that when translated down below to our level turn out to be what we call male. Okay, so this maleness and females thing is an interesting thing. It's a complex thing in its own. So anyway, now Mahakal had what he now needed to create its pseudo-creation in its totality. So he had the souls to populate it, and he had the materials to create it. However, due to his heinous acts, first with Kurma, and then with violating Adya, who was a gift by Satgurus to Kal, and he still violated her, which is described in detail in the book I won't go into, and Mahakal was expelled from Satlok into his pseudo-creation. So we call him the first fallen angel. And it's where the concept of the devil and Satan and everything comes from, because he was fallen. The Bible picks up on this particularly and talks about this fallen level, and that Kal is actually often synonymously referred to with the devil and so on. So, but when he was expelled, although he violated Adya, Adya was obsessed by him, obsessed by Kal. She had an attraction to Kal, so she was also sent in exile to the pseudo-creation. So they both sat there, Kal and his consort Adya. So now that Mahakal had his kingdom and the means by which to populate and sustain it, which it still does to this day by dividing itself up into the various roles known as deities and the 33 million demigods that we hear about today. So Kal himself divided himself up to all the major deities that we speak about, and also the millions of gods, from the god of the wind and the thunder and everything. So he divided himself up in order. These are consciousness. These are parts of consciousness that have a specific role. Yeah, we call them demigods because here we relate everything to male and female, man and woman. We personify or humanize everything to make sense of it. But these are actually powers, 33 million powers, but in Hinduism they refer to them as the 33 million gods. All right? But they're all part of the one. He divided himself up again, like Satgurus did with his attributes. Kal copied this and divided himself up into 33 million gods and the deities, each one fulfilling a particular role, so each one may be worshipped and admired, which ultimately goes back to Kal and build his ego even more, because he's been worshipped. The whole idea of him is he wanted to be worshipped, he wanted to rule over, he was a megalomaniac, he was the ego attribute, yeah? He's actually fulfilling what he was created to do. Yes, we can't really complain about that. Thus, there would be. Now, imagine the souls now are sent through the seed of life, the pod of life, into this creation, and there would be utterly no hope, no way out for the visiting souls of the pseudo-creation, were it not for the infinite patience and mercy of the visiting perfect saints, holy masters and noble mystics into our world. In other words, this trap is so well laid that there's no way out for the minds. The minds belong to Kal. The souls are trapped and enveloped by the mind. They're in a prison cell of the mind. How are they going to escape? You need the key. You need the key to unlock it. And Kal is not going to unlock his jail. He wants them there. That's the whole point of him creating it. So this game started between Satpurush eternity versus Kal or time or illusion. The battle between them begins. It's the greatest drama on earth, and an epic, in fact. If somebody was to make a Netflix movie about this, it will do really well. And it really is the greatest of all epics. In fact, there's no epic better than this. No wars, no stories ever written on earth that could trump this particular epic story between eternity or Satpurusha and Mahakal, playing the game for the souls. They're both vying for the souls. Mahakal tricking the souls into thinking they're in some sort of wondrous state, of giving them trinkets and trashes to keep them occupied. And of course Satpurusha saying, no, you're limiting yourself in this condition. You're not expressing your full glory. You're actually of divine origin. And I'm going to send my beloved ones, the Al, the merciful ones, the saints, in order to rescue you. Let the game begin. Right? And that game has been continuing since the beginning and is still continuing to this day. So anyway, back to the question raised, I will describe the 16 attributes of manifestation now in the order of their creation. So the first attribute was called Satpurusha, or true manifested Lord. The second attribute was called Kurma, or the latent reservoir of creation. The third attribute was called Satgyan, or true knowledge. The fourth attribute was called Vivek, or discernment between noble and ignoble, or truth and non-truth ways. The fifth attribute was Ahamkar, or the ego attribute, in the form of Kal Niranjan. So Mahakal's full name is Kal Niranjan. Okay, but we refer him as Mahakal. There's two parts to it. You see, there's the Mahakal, the governing overall Lord, and then there's just Kal, time, which governs the illusion. So Mahakal resides in the fourth level as the fallen angel, and his limited version, or his version for illusion, which is time, in order to create illusion, he created the whole concept of time and space. That is just called Kal. And he resides at the bottom of the third region, at the top of Trikriti, right in the great sun, in the sun, there in the void. Now the sixth attribute was called Sahaj, or natural effortless, or the nature of things. The seventh attribute was called Santosh, or contentment. The eighth attribute was called Surat, or attention focus of attention. The ninth was called Ananda, or bliss, infinite happiness. The 10th was called Dayal, or merciful forgiveness. The 11th was called Nishkam, or selflessness. The 12th was called Jal Rangi, or renunciation. The 13th was called Achint, or worryless yearning. The 14th was called Prem Bhakti, or devotional love. And the 15th was called Din Dayal, or the merciful ones, such as the saints, holy masters that we all know of that come today. So they come from the 15th attribute. They represent the 15th attribute of the Lord, and their job is to come and rescue the souls. Then the 16th attribute was called Sakya, or patient friendship, such as that found in the perfect living masters, saints, or noble mystics. Now you have to understand what Kabir is trying to explain here is that the creation itself, with all its particular roles that are played in creation, are consciousness. There are forms of consciousness. They're not things separate from consciousness itself. And because they are consciousness, they have attributes, personalized attributes. They are all, you could say, beings. Let's say because they are separated, let's say we call them an entity or a being. In that separation, they have a particular attribute, and when they all work together, they create the whole creation. So for example, Din Dayal, the saints, come here. But how would they come here? Because they have no karma, right, to enter into Kal's creation, right? Similarly, by what means would they come here in order to effect their particular job of rescuing souls? So the qualities that you have, like patience, love, virtue, all of these are actual powers which are given to you in order to make them happen. They're not just consequences of your existence. Everything you think or do has to have a power behind it, allowing it to happen. Right? This is where it gets a very complicated chess game. So, friendship was associated with Din Dayal. So that's what they've created together. So the 15th and 16th attribute, Din Dayal was the masters, and the concept of friendship, that they come in the form as a friend, not as a guru, not as the Lord, as a friend, was the 16th attribute. And together, when they come down into Kal's creation, the master has to look like a man or a woman and be a friend. They cannot display any magical powers or any of their godlike powers here on earth. The only thing they can do is offer is friendship. But by attaching yourself to friendship, that friend can take you out. So that's the system that's used here. The intricacy of it is quite marvelous, and when you look at this from the higher perspective, it's fascinating how the entire creation came into being at its elemental parts. And I could go on about this a very long time with all the different attributes, right? But just to answer this question, because this question specifically was talking about the ego attribute or the fifth attribute.
There's a couple more questions I relate.
Go on.
So you've mentioned the other 15.
Yeah.
And their role.
Right.
A little.
Yeah.
Do they all have their own universes and our souls reside in there?
No, they don't have. The other attributes don't have their own universes like Carl, right? Because in order to have a universe, they have to go to Kurma to create it. And they have to have the desire to create it. Only Carl, the fifth element, ego, has the desire to be separate from others, right? Which is what the nature of ego is, right? All the others are happy to be part of the fabric. It's like this building contains wood and stone and bricks. They're all happy to be part of the fabric.
Good.
Yeah? So they're part of the fabric of creation. So they don't have their own universes to govern. But it's just the fabric of creation, yeah.
And the last bit of that question is there duality there also, or is everyone in a state of permanent bliss?
There is no duality anywhere outside of Mahakal pseudo-creation. Duality only exists in Mahakal pseudo-creation. Every other form of creation, there's no duality.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
So was it Anami Purush that kick-started all this?
Yeah, Anami Purush is formless, has no form and no manifestation. It's unmanifested. So therefore, it is nothingness. But this nothingness contains a will. It's not nothingness in the way we understand it. It's nothingness in the sense that there's no manifestation of anything, of any kind. But it's still will. This power or will exists on its own. It is self-existent. It doesn't need a manifestation for it to exist. However, to express itself in the form of something, of a manifestation, or let's say a creation, then he had to create his manifested form of will, which we call Agam Purush. So we have Anami Purush, who then manifested Agam Purush, which was a manifestation of that will in form, in something, as a manifestation, as an entity. But then, of course, that still is not a creation. It's just a manifestation of a framework. So then Agam Purush had to manifest in form as Alak Purush in order to now create the individual means by which a creation would follow, starting with Satgurus. And then Alak Purush produced or created Satpurush. And Satpurush in Satlok was the first manifestation of what we could call a creation.
So Anami's made lesser versions of himself.
Yes.
So everything, there's a drop-in version, isn't there?
Yes.
A lesser version.
Less power, less glory.
Less truth.
Less truth even, yeah. Yeah. So in order for creation of something other than the absolute to exist, then yes, this took place in this sense. However, it's even more complicated than that, because in fact there are countless trillions of Sat blocks created, each with different versions of the creation that was to follow. So when you go to Satlok, you are going to one particular version of this creation, but there are infinite numbers of them from Alak Purush. So Alak Purush manifested every conceivable way of having a creation, which is inconceivable to the mind. That's why they call it the inconceivable or the invisible realm. The reason why they say it's invisible realm is because you can't see it. Because it's not a manifestation yet, it's a concept. So Alak, Agam and Anami are all conceptual. They're not manifested as in something that you could understand from the soul's point of view even, of seeing and hearing anything.
So would that mean there's so many Mahakals then, and so many
Yes.
deities and so many...
But how do you know they're all Mahakals there? There could be different versions of creation. Things you cannot dream of. So there's no point going into all of that. You can, when you get there to that certain level and you have a glimpse of it, let's say, you will see how complex creation really is. Because if we say that the Lord is truly infinite, there cannot be a finite number of anything. There has to be infinite numbers of things. But also there's no such thing as infinity, because that suggests a numerical value, and even infinity has to have a level. So we're using terms here very loosely to explain concepts beyond the understanding of the mind. That's why most saints don't really explain this too much, because they just say you'll know when you get there, which is actually true. Because the ability of the soul to comprehend these things is okay, but even then the soul is limited. Once the soul has been manifested in the form of the soul, the concept of, say, anami or agam to a level of the soul in Satgurus is also mind-blowing. Yeah? It could just about conceive alak, the level of alak that manifested Satgurus. It can understand that. But beyond that, the soul cannot understand it.
When one reaches Satgurus, the questions don't end, do they?
Satgurus is the middle. It's a resting place.
So the questions continue.
It separates the higher truths, or the very higher realms of creation, from the lower illusory realms, or the false or pseudo creation. You could say Satgurus is right in the middle. Yeah, it's not the end game.
Yes, so the questions don't end.
No. Okay.
Next
Any
question.
other questions? Yeah.
I've got plenty more.
Okay, fine.
Okay, this is about the physical master.
Right.
There is a question in there, but it's not obvious, but I'm
Okay.
sure you'll know what it is.
Okay.
In one of your talks, you mentioned that seeing the physical master after initiation is just for the mind. Yet, Ishwar Puriji also told the story of his master, suggesting to see the master every week or month, or at least once a year, or come back in another life if unable to see the master once a year.
One of the famous, was it contradictions? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not really, because you have to understand, what was Great Master referring to? Great Master referring to the fact that his mission had now extended into the modern era, where there's lots of distractions, lots of things happening. At that time in the 1920s, when he said this, the world was really progressing. The TV was invented, there was a telephone, there was all kinds of, even cinema, right? There's all kinds of distractions now pulling the souls here and there. So Master simply said that you have to know what the question was. So the question was, in this world of rapid advancement, which for them it was very advanced, and now for us we think this is backward, but it was advancing for them. You know, considering that just a few years ago they left a plough behind, and now they're in an industrial country. Anyway, how should we maintain the momentum of our spiritual progress? So that was the question. And Great Master said, he said, well, you should come and see me every day if you can. They said, what if we can't? Because we have to work. He said, then come every week. He said, but what if we live a bit far? We can't come. He said, then come every month.
Yeah.
And then he said, but what if we live in another country? Yeah. He said, then come once a year is okay. And then he said, then I said, but what if we can't? We can't afford it. He said, then there's always the next life to come back, right? But so Ishwarji quotes this, but this is not strictly true. The real answer is that depending on your level of seeking and yearning within you, which is from the grace of the Lord, seeing the Master regularly or attending satsang is a great help, but it's not a must. Because once you're initiated, the Lord promises you, the Master promises that no matter what happens, you will go home within 4 lifetimes. No matter what. Now, what is the point of going and seeing the physical Master regularly? To keep us motivated mentally, to keep us on the path, for entertainment for the mind. The Master is an illusion because he's physical and he's going to die and perish. We've seen that. No Master's lived here forever. You are made of the same flesh blood as the Master. You're going to perish. The Master's going to perish. So it's like the illusions seeking the comfort of the illusion. It's okay. It's part of the game, right? So what he's trying to refer to is that we need sometimes, We need that comfort. However, let's say somebody was initiated and for some reason or other they could never see the master again. The master's within them and they're able to start doing their spiritual practice and start looking for the master within them. What do they need the physical for? In fact, the physical, as Babaji says, is just a distraction then. For initiates, Babaji himself said that the physical master is simply a distraction. And he would complain when, I think Canada was complaining that master hadn't been for 6 years there or something. And he said, oh, you should be making good spiritual progress then. When the secretary stood up in Hayes Park and was complaining that master hadn't come and visit them, when will he come? And he said, oh, it's very good. He said, that means you must have made really good progress, because if I'm not there, you're going to look for, and you're yearning for me, you're saying you're crying for me, why are you going within in Turkey? And of course everybody laughed, because they know that they just wanted the physical master there as a replacement for the internal master, right? Which is not the way of Santma. So Babaji made a joke about it, but actually it made a very important point. You know, that, and then he said that the physical master is just a distraction, really, for the initiates. But for non-initiates, the physical master is absolutely necessary. Because before you apply for initiation, you have to build a relationship with that master. So therefore, the only way you're going to do that is by physically being in his company and presence. Then you'll ask for initiation. But once the initiation is done, he kicks you out. He says, go. Like a bird, once the bird has matured in a nest, he says to the offspring, go, fly away. Right? So the answer is actually, I was correct in saying that you don't need the master, but having the master in your life physically is a great help for those who are easily distracted by the world. But it also has a two-edged sword to this. It's also a distraction in itself, because as long as you're chasing the physical master, you'll never want to go within to search the real master. So then when the master leaves this earthly plane, what are you to do? Then you start crying and hollering and paining. The master's gone, what do we do now? So you start running after other masters. And it's just totally lost the point.
Yeah.
So actually, it's better you don't see the master after you initiate and work on your inner progress.
Thank you. This bit ties in with that. Once the master leaves the physical world and one finds a new master to attend satsang with, does the above rule of seeing a master also apply?
No, because the master who initiated them is the master who's going to take them home. They may seek information or support or direction from another master or an enlightened one, doesn't have to be a master, but that person is not responsible for taking them home. So that rule doesn't apply there either.
Okay. Next question is about giving and doing no harm. Should one give money to beggars on the street, wondering if the money is used for meat, alcohol or drugs?
If the person has any doubt in their mind, they should not give. Because most certainly, there are many organizations you can give money to who support the homeless or the sheltered indirectly without giving it to individuals. Unfortunately, most of these people on the streets these days are drug users, alcoholics, mentally ill, and they will use it to purchase these things, which directly causes karma for you. So you should not give. Babaji also says that you should not give to the beggars. Because if they misuse these funds and you've supplied them the means by which they do it, let's say you gave some money to somebody to buy alcohol, then he goes and beats up his wife and nearly kills her. You're responsible, as well as him. You're a co-conspirator in this crime.
You can give them food though, can't you?
You can give them food, which is vegetarian food, but nothing that involves cruelty or harm.
Sure.
If you do anything that involves cruelty or harm, you have to suffer.
Right, thank you. Right, I've got next question. It's in two parts. First part of the question, regarding buying and cooking meat for family members or paying for these foods at dinners for others, what is the karmic effect of doing this, and is it worthwhile causing disappointment in others to avoid this giving?
You see, we're all placed in different circumstances in life. Some people are fortunate in that they don't have to make these sort of choices. They're born in a vegetarian family and, everything is fine from that point of view. Some people marry into non-veg family and therefore they have to look after that family. From a purely Sant point of view, yes, there is karma involved in cooking meat and supplying it, and even alcohol, but that's because it's in your destiny to have to suffer that for a bit more. So in other words, you haven't got to the point where you've really overcome this connection with the meat eating world and the alcohol world. So you're still paying off that last remnant. However, all is not lost. There's two things you can do. One is you could appeal to them and say, look, because I follow this path, please don't let me cook it. You can eat it, but I don't want to pay for this or cook for this, if possible. If they agree, if you happen to be a noble or respectful family, they'll get that, and they'll say, okay, that's fine. You know, we won't expect you, we'll have the maid cook it or something else, so you don't take active involvement. The other thing is, let's say you do have to cook this meat, and they said, no, you're the wife, I expect you to cook it and serve it to me on a plate with a bottle of Bacardi, right? Then you do so, you have to do so. But if you do this in the name of the Lord, like if you're initiated by a perfect living master and you invoke the, let's say the grace of the master, say, please, you have put me in this role, this is my script. I will do so because I'm not here to judge anyone. But at the same time, I understand that this could be causing karmic harm. I do so in your name. Master, please forgive this sin. And if you really believe that firstly the master has the power to forgive that sin, and that you're not doing it in any malicious or harmful or delightful way, but you're doing it as simply as a duty, then do it and it'll be forgiven.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, because I always get myself in situations where you're going to go out for meals with friends and they're meat eaters and they drink. And
but you could just pay for your part. That's an easy fix because
yeah,
you're not in a marriage there. So you could easily just pay for your part, they pay for theirs, and nothing lost.
Always cause a bit of awkwardness though, doesn't it?
Well, then one would say choose your friends wisely.
I know. These are work people though. You can't
I know.
who you work with.
But I mean, generally you can avoid these things. But
oh yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Because these are optional things. It's different. Yes, there is karma to be in that situation. If you can't get yourself out of it, then there is karma to be paid. But if you explain very well, you do everything you can to explain that this is your principle, this is your following, this is what you believe in. Please don't put me in that position. Most people are reasonable, particularly in professional life. They might not agree with your principles, but they would respect them.
Yeah.
You know, then they'll agree. I think sometimes people don't give others the benefit of the doubt and don't try to explain to them the particular situation they're in.
Yeah.
You might find them more agreeable than you think.
Sure. Because I must admit, when I do go out, like with a friend one-on-one, and like if I might be paying for the meal, they actually do eat vegan and they actually enjoy it. Yeah. So there is that.
It's also an opportunity for them, if you're going to pay for them, to give them vegan food or introduce them to healthy food. Yeah.
Okay, second part, this is about the harm bit. Since doing no harm is the right way of living, I feel that speaking up regarding the above matter that we talked about just, of not supplying or cooking meat for other people, or voicing my preference about this, could cause harm and or discomfort to others. How can I tell the difference in the level of harm caused by either action?
You see, it's the way you do something that makes the difference. You can perfectly lovingly and kindly say to them, look, you know, I don't mind fulfilling all my duties, but I follow a particular belief system and it doesn't really allow me to do this. Right? I would ask you, most humbly, begging you, please, can you absolve me from this particular responsibility? I'll do all the other things. But and usually then, if you're doing this in this kind way, with their permission, involving them, then there's no harm. But if you do create displeasure because you're arrogant and say, no, I'm better than you, I'm not going to cook this, go and do what you want, eat on the street if necessary, then you are creating harm. Because your attitude stinks.
Okay, it just occurred to me the situation that I'm in all the time because of my job.
Yeah.
You're probably going to say I'm paying off some karma here.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to assess patients, and one of the ways of assessing them is for them to cook a meal. So I need to figure out what they're going to make, ingredients. I buy the ingredients, and that ingredients is meat.
Yeah.
I do get my money back, but I have to buy it first and then put it in.
Don't worry about this. When it comes to your job, and the fact that you're doing this as part of the job, then you don't have to worry.
Oh. Okay.
Because this is not set by you. This is set by the system. The system is compelling you to do this, not because you have voluntarily entered into a situation for this reason. It is part of the job. So you should do this job well. Try to make it as healthy as possible. Yes, try to use your influence to encourage them at this point to eat vegetarian or alternative. But if they insist, the meat, then you buy the meat. They give you the money back. So it's basically them paying for it, really.
Yeah.
And they're also cooking it, so you're not involved in that. So really, this is a case where no, you don't have to worry. You just do the 5 names, repeat the mantra when you're doing it, so you don't get attached to it. The most important thing is that you don't feel delight in doing this, nor do you feel that you would like to eat this yourself. That you miss it. So as long as you are keeping yourself pure-minded, let's say, then it's okay, don't worry. This is just a job.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions around religion and spirituality and attitudes. What will religion and spirituality be like in the next 5 years? And have there been any changes in the attitude or principles of Western society?
Well, yes, there's a lot of change to come. I mean, specifically 5 years, but let's just talk in general terms. There's a great shift going to be happening towards the end of this decade, the 2020s, in dissatisfaction with the ways of governing in the Western world. Through various poor decisions and poor judgments, the West is going to plunge itself into a difficult situation economically, politically, in which other countries from the East, predominantly China, will take the market lead, will lead the world in manufacturing and production and GDP and all of that. This is going to result in a more restricted and more heavy burden to the taxpayers in the Western world, and also a lessening of industry. Industries are going to be moving over to the more profitable countries, and as a result, the Western economies are going to slowly decline, and this is going to cause a lot of this discomfort in the population, as well as distress in their day-to-day living. There's going to be more mental health problems. People are going to be fighting for fewer jobs. It's going to become quite difficult, and as a whole, this is going to force people to start turning to alternative forms of existence, alternative methods of running a society, as well as spirituality. So it's not that they're all going to run to spirituality, but you'll find spiritual organizations growing within these communities. Like spiritual communities will be growing, increasing in number after this event. So that's going to be a positive change. But on a general state, that people are going to be wanting a different form of governing, and they're going to be looking at alternatives to the current system, saying the current system is not working. So there'll be major changes. But this is going to happen over not just 5 years, but say the next 5 years you won't see too much difference, just more misery and more people privately going to seeking spirituality, but nothing on a big scale. That'll be in the 2030s when we really see things take off, and that's going to be because of global disasters. That's going to be because of very concerning climatic and environmental factors affecting the populations of the earth, and that's going to really shock people who didn't see it coming. Even the protesters, the climatologists, are not expecting what will come, and that's going to drive people to say we need to change the whole concept of how we live. So that's going to start initiating incentives or programs in starting with the Western world, to create less impact on the world, and also alternative types of forms of employment, income, and the whole monetary system. So yeah, a lot of changes to come this century, A lot of changes.
Don't sound good.
Well, sometimes you have to have an upheaval before you gain some benefit.
Yeah.
Just the nature of things.
Sure.
Will AI play a big role in that?
Yes. There's a lot of problems coming with AI.
I've got a question on that, so can
Oh,
you hold that thought?
okay, yes.
Thank you. Right, the next bit of religion and spirituality question. Religion and spirituality have always put down sexuality as a sin, or as empowering the lowest chakra, which should be avoided. As an initiate of a perfect living master in a committed relationship, what responsibility does one have towards one's partner, especially if each has different desires regarding sexuality? Or is a spiritual practitioner supposed to be celibate?
No, a spiritual practitioner is not meant to be celibate, not unless the conditions allow for it. If they're young in a family environment, remember the ideal path is not to be extreme in anything, but to walk the middle road. That means you have to strike a balance between living your life and performing your duties and responsibilities on one hand, and your spiritual progress on the other hand. Now, karma has placed you in certain situations, and you have to make the best of these. Yes, from a spiritual point of view, it would be ideal if you didn't live a family's life, you were a renunciate, and you just meditated and so on. But that's not how this world works. So for most people, they live in a relationship environment, in a family environment, and part of the relationship environment is procreation, having children. So if the duty is to satisfy the wife or the husband, then you have to fulfill that. There's no harm in this. It doesn't in fact affect your spirituality if you are not obsessed by it. The thing is, if you become obsessed and it's the only reason you're in a relationship, then that's a problem. If it's just something you're doing alongside the relationship, like you like them as a person, or you get to know them as well, and therefore you're fulfilling your duties, or even just lying there and thinking of England or whatever, right? You're doing your duty, then it's fine. There's no problem with it. Because you shouldn't become obsessed with it and attached to it so that it becomes the be-all and end-all of your life, the driving force of life. So providing you are progressing spiritually, then you're just paying off your karma. You're fulfilling your karmic obligation with this individual, but your attitude is not obsessive about it. You know, it's not the main driving force in the relationship. So then it's okay.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions regarding Babaji and what he said.
Right.
Babaji once said that if we were aware of everything, we wouldn't be able to cope with it. What does he mean by that?
Yes, I totally agree with him. And this is a difficulty I have here, because I've been asked to tell the full truth for the modern age. And I even have to hold back. Because if the full truth was explained to anyone, even an initiate who's not enlightened, so anybody who's crossed into Par-Brahm onwards, it's fine. You could tell them. Anybody who's not, it would blow their mind. They would cease to be a spiritual practitioner, perhaps leave the path, even abandon the masters, because they would lose complete faith because of the nature of the mind. So absolutely, Babaji's right. If we knew everything, we knew the whole truth, we would not take part in creation today. We would not be participant. We would not be able to cope with it, because we'll see what's the point. The whole thing is illusion anyway, and the whole thing doesn't matter. Even the spiritual path doesn't matter. So in the higher sense, yes, it would be devastating to the way the world is run. So masters have a responsibility not to, let's say, rock the boat too much. Whilst they are revealing spiritual truth, they give you just enough to entice you to go within and find out for yourself. And once you go and find out for yourself and you look back at creation, then you realize so much was not said. But then you also understand why.
Sure.
Because at that level of knowledge, there's a level of responsibility that comes with it. So you can only say so much to the souls here, because you still want them to live in a society way and live together and be together and love each other and all of these things. So in order for that, you have to dress it up a little bit, the truth. A lot, actually quite a lot. You have to dress up the truth. But interestingly, as we're evolving intellectually, more and more of these coverings of the truth are being shed away. Like Babaji's been accused of introducing Sant 2.0 because he's contradicted various certain teachings that Huzur used to say. Not contradicting them, but he's kind of dismissed certain things that were considered to be the bedrock of Sadhana, right? He's now saying things which are very, although he briefly mentions it only, he doesn't dwell upon it, but he's throwing it in there in the mix, so that people who are discerning, people who are very aware and listening carefully,
will get their bit.
Will get it, and they'll realize, okay, yeah, I get that. But the ordinary people just go over their heads, right? And it's very interesting how Babaji's doing that very cleverly. So yes, he's absolutely right.
The second part was about, is having the highest consciousness and awareness possible while in the human form, or is it actually not possible in this reality?
Depends what you mean by the highest awareness, because everybody has a different version of that. So let's say the highest awareness that a human being can have and be living in a human body is Satgurus. Now if you're going to ISTAuk, Agam and Anami, you can only have a glimpse. No one here, right, including the masters, can have full awareness of the levels up to Anami. Because if they did, they could not exist here. So they have to dumb down, let's say, and at the level of Satgurus onwards, in order for them to then be able to project themselves in the pseudo creation that Carl created and play the role of the master. Yeah.
So why do people say so? Well, some people say that Supreme Masters reach 8th and 9th stage. Wouldn't that be a anomaly?
No, you know, the thing is that if you look at historically of all the religions, they've divided the realms into great numbers of different regions. You see, within it's a way of explaining things. It's not that there's, it's just, I mean, for example, the astral realm contains 150 levels. So let's say you were just talking about the astral realm and you decided to divide all those 150 levels of consciousness within the astral form. Then you could quite easily say, then there's 150 levels alone. Okay. You know? So yeah, divisions, these, really, there's only two parts. There's Parbrahm, or the entire creation of soul, and then there's the mind realms. So that's actually two. But we've divided the mind realms up into 3 or 4. There's actually 4, because, believe it or not, there's a level of consciousness below the physical, which is like a dormant or comatose consciousness, where entities exist there in almost a comatose state for a very long period of time. And that's below us. So yes, masters never usually talk about that because they don't want us to go down to that level of thinking where we just become the rock or we just become like that. But yes, there's a whole realm of existence below the physical in which beings exist in an absolute comatose state. Imagine that for the entire duration of creation. Yeah.
So below the physical.
Yeah.
What would you name that then?
Yeah. Don't worry about names. Let's just say call it a comatose realm. There's no official name. The names are made by humans. Like Satgurus is a human name. There's no name for Satgurus in Satgurus. Yeah. Language is only here. There, everything is telepathic. Everything is a different way of communicating. Yeah, awareness level. At the level of awareness, then even telepathy doesn't exist. It's just awareness. And how do you explain awareness?
So there's a whole creation below the physical.
Yeah. But don't dwell upon that because it's largely dormant. And I'm sure you don't want to go there.
Okay.
So,
okay,
yeah.
I've got a question about higher thinking.
Okay.
You kind of touched on this already. Is the Western world still continuing on its downward economic trajectory due to the need for higher thinking and principles to be awakened?
Yes, you could say that's correct statement, in the sense that the axis of spiritual power is shifting over from the east to the west. So now the West, largely America, but also the UK, will be now the centre of the spiritual world for the next 900 years. So yes, whilst India and China will become industrialised, modern, and exactly what the West has been, they will become, funnily enough, simply because nothing is ever permanent, everything changes. The evolution of the planet means that now the Western world will be given a chance to express its spirituality, and at least has had its time, you know, and so on. So it's not that there'll be no spirituality in the East. It's just that it will be like here, where it's in pockets, isolated pockets, but the mainstream, like India, will eventually become secular. It won't consider itself a spiritual country. The new generation, the Generation Z, for example, when they get into power in 20 years' time or something, India will become a republic. A secular republic, and religion will be something that is relegated to small communities. Yeah.
You know, whatever path the US takes, especially with the new president, do you think the UK will follow that trajectory? Like, if they make any changes with how they run the government, the economy, do you think the UK will follow, or the UK go in a different direction?
No. UK is very closely allied to America. So when America coughs, UK sneezes. So they're two peas in a pod. So but that's why they're linked in that sense.
It
that
seems to be like the way they're approaching like government is like different. You know,
well, Americans are more extreme in their craziness, but here they do it more subtly and covertly. So here the laws to restrict you are more covert, whereas in America they're just bullshit about it. At least they, you know what you're getting there. Here it's more covertly done. Your freedoms are being eroded away, and things. But in America, it's more like saying, "Yeah, we're going to do this." It's tough.
Okay, is that all right?
Yeah.
Next question on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
What type of artificial intelligence applications will significantly or globally affect our society, positive or negative, in the next 2 to 5 years?
I think the question is trying to say which types of AI will affect us as a population.
Or maybe what apps to get.
Well, no. Well, I'm going to answer it in a general term. The main influence that AI is going to have over the next few years is in taking over roles where you don't need human beings. So production will be greatly run by AI, and in factories in the future there won't be any human beings apart from maybe quality control overseeing, but really entire manufacturing will go over to AI. Nobody involved in the manufacturing process, nobody involved in the packing, distribution, boxing process. This will all be done automatically. That's the first industry. Second thing is that roles such as legal, finance, medical, in the GP level, they will be all done by AI. So for example, banks will close. The banks will be just clearing houses where people work within, but not open to the public. All money transactions will be done electronically, and even cash will eventually be dispensed with, so there'll be no cash transactions. So then that'll be automated, and hardly any human involvement. The only people will be like opening accounts and businesses. In GPs, again, GPs being the first line of medical connection between the public, that will be all automated. You'll simply go to a machine, like a screen, and you'll put in your details. They'll have your entire medical history. So AI will be used to look up your medical history, and then you go through a flowchart. What would you like to see me about? I'll be ticking this box, and as you tick the boxes, the database will put 2 and 2 things together and say that if it's something obvious, they say, right, I think you have this, therefore we're going to prescribe this, and an automatic prescription will be generated for you to collect from pharmacy, right? The only time you'd actually physically see a GP is if the AI couldn't resolve
Physical
your problem.
examination, maybe.
Yeah,
You need to see
not
the
necessary.
person. Really?
Because what will happen is, for example, with the optoscope that they're going to have, you're going to just be able to point it at your skin or at a lump or a swelling, and it'll be able to determine. There'll be various things that you can do yourself to determine what the diagnosis is.
Sure,
Yeah,
like sending a report. Like
yeah,
from,
like monitors. You'll have
Yeah.
lots of monitors on you. Like, for example, alongside this, you'll be wearing monitors. So high blood pressure monitor, a blood sugar monitor, hormone monitor, and they'll be able to read this wirelessly as you go into your appointment, and they'll be able to determine what you need.
Wow.
So a lot of the baseline kind of medical treatments and so would be gone. Similarly, legal-wise, because all the books and all the presents and everything there, and all the law is laid down electronically, when you go in future to a solicitor, it'll be all automated. The whole thing, because they're very much textually based on written exact interpretations, not open to variation.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's very easy to AI that, because that will be that'll be easy to translate into AI. So when you go for legal advice, they'll simply say this is it, and they'll just pull up the current law that governs that area, and then you tick the relevant box. Have you done this? Have you? No. Then do this first, then come back. So that will be the legal advice. And the biggest impact will probably be in farming, because AI is going to have a massive effect in farms, because farms will eventually be automated, and they're going to be turning to agriculture. So slowly farms will be converted to agriculture, and they will be automated.
So not having to look after animals.
There won't be any eventually in the 2030s. Yeah.
It's what we see around, especially in Europe, around the situation with farmers and farmers part of this, as they know this is coming.
Yeah.
So they're deliberately trying to get people off their lands.
Because what happens, they want to automate the farms and make them productive. And the trouble with farming is that the farmers complain that they're not getting paid enough for their produce, because there's a lot of labour-intensive work that doesn't need to be done. It could be automated. So robot machines will go around fertilizing it, even picking it and everything. It'll be all, so the farmer will be just a glorified person operating from a house somewhere, pushing all the buttons, pulling the levers to make the various farm machinery do what it likes. As the sensors increase, the ability to navigate and self-drive, like the automotive industry, all cars will be built by robots as well. There won't be any human involvement. Most machinery and tech things are going to be built by robot, not by human. So it's going to have a massive impact. AI is going to have a massive impact. And the worst part of it is that the criminals are also going to hijack this data to be able to steal your information from your phone very easily, or your laptop. That's going to be an ongoing battle. And even impersonate your bank or your famous football star or something, telling you to go and buy this thing and so on. And it's all generated by AI. It looks like the real thing, but it isn't. So you won't know who to trust. So AI is going to create, through the criminal elements of it, great mistrust, because you're just not going to know whether that's genuine, that video or that thing telling you to do this, or whether that call is genuine, or whether that email is genuine, or whatever is genuine. You just won't know.
I think it's happening already.
It's already happening, where people can take like 30 seconds of your voice and create whole sentences and say, oh, I am abroad, can you send me some money? And pretend they're a member of your family.
This is going to be a new cybercrime, an AI crime, which need a whole raft of legislation and technologies to counter it. Absolutely.
But then we will see less and less of petty and street crime, won't we?
Oh yeah. People are going to become more sophisticated,
especially
in their crimes.
Cash.
Yeah, I mean, because cash will be eliminated by the 2030s, in the middle 2030s. So, but yeah, this cybercrime, electronic crime, it's a big problem. It's going to become a massive problem before it's really adequately dealt with. So AI is going to have, for the average person, a largely negative effect. It's going to make them feel miserable. But eventually, as we progress with the controls of AI, then it become a great help, because all the horrible jobs will be done by robots and by AI. Even fighting wars will be done automatically. Nobody will be there in the front. It'll be all robot machines, robot tanks, robot things which could be controlled by base stations fighting each other with the objects. Yeah.
Governments are aware that AI is going to have a huge impact and a lot of jobs are going to go. So I believe
the trouble is that we need to have a counter industry, and it's going to take them a little time to create a counter industry, and because somebody has to produce and maintain these AIs, and there has to be other services. Like AI can't replace certain services like threading or your eyebrows or physical massage or certain things which will always happen. So the beauty industry, the cosmetic industry, the physical help industry will always be there. Where you need a personal contact, the specialist areas.
Yeah.
So even in medicine, although some surgeries would be performed by AI, again, where it's a complicated surgical procedure, you'll need a physical doctor to perform that operation. Or if you're going to a private clinic where they have to individually assess you at that time, then yeah, you'll need somebody to be able to relate to and explain things. So there will be that personal connection in certain industries. But baseline for most industries will be automated.
I was reading somewhere that the governments will have to introduce UBI, Universal Basic Income, so we get paid for not working.
Yeah.
Like we did with furlough.
Yeah.
And that will have to happen because so many jobs are going.
But that will come from the industry. So what happens is that the industry that's taking over all of these will have to pay a certain type of levy that is used then to pay for people who can't find work because they don't have an industry to work in. If that'll become mandatory. So when you set up a business or an industry, you'd have to pay for those who cannot work. So yeah, that's true. But eventually new industries will come. Like massive growth will happen later on with the recycling industry. Recycling, energy productions. There's a lot of growth sectors that will be happening with technologies. New technologies will be emerging technologies. There's a lot of interesting things to come, let's say. I don't want to spoil the fun of it. But that's going to provide a lot of jobs as well, but in totally different areas that don't exist right now.
Okay, the last question is about ISTAuk.
Right.
What will ISTAuk be doing next year? You have many Q&A satsangs on YouTube, plus this year's satsangs were the most popular questions concerning different themes. I was wondering what approach ISTAuk will take for its satsangs next year.
Okay, well, the main plan would be on practical living the path. So it'll be titled Living the Path or Living the Spiritual Way of Life. And there won't be any more theoretical talks. So this is the last one. It'll be simply addressing issues concerning day-to-day life on a practical sense. The theme would be to introduce ideas and concepts that actually work and yield results. So that's what works and what doesn't in spiritual practice, and answering questions surrounding the implementation of those ideas, so that you actually see a change yourself. So it will be very much practically orientated. Yes, and there will be some IMR sessions as well later on, in which you'll have a 3-day event where you're cut off from the world completely for the serious initiators.
What's IMR? For those who don't know.
All right. The IMR is the international or intense meditation retreat. So it has two meanings, either international or intense meditation retreat. And what that means is for people who want to actually see for themselves or validate what they've been hearing about, they can opt to attend these sessions, 3-day sessions, where they'll be isolated, cut off from the outside world, focusing only on the meditation and on the spiritual practice of going within. And then they can see for themselves, to varying degrees depending on their sanskars, their ability to perform the practice. But all of them will come away with some experience, a profound experience, that have a profound effect on them. So we're planning to introduce that now, hopefully in the middle of next year. Let's see what the Lord decides, if He decides it's appropriate or not at this time.
Obstacles.
Yeah, it's because it's quite a revolutionary thing. I mean, it was practiced in the past, say at the time of Kabir and Guru Nanak and so on, where they would have retreats. People would sit in intense meditation for up to 10 days, sometimes even up to 40 days was the longest, in total isolation, not speaking to anybody. In intense meditation, and they all went within, they all went in and they all saw. So 3 days at the minimum, I think in the West, it's difficult for people to keep away from their iPhones and their computers and their families for more than 3 days. So let's start with 3 days. Let's see. We've already demoed it a couple of times and had good results. Inner-visions were encountered. So if we can roll this out, but it'll be on a application approval basis. So not everybody will be accepted. Those ones who are sincere in seeking the truth and will abide by the rules, the strict rules concerning this, because you're literally living a reclusive monk type life for 3 days, or none, because it's open women and men, it's not exclusive. But definitely they will get some experience, and they'll have definitely profound changes in their life if they can do it. So it just depends. Whoever is meant to will enroll and do it on a first come first served basis. We only have 9 places at each sitting, and they'll be done every 3 months.
Sure.
So yeah, that's the exciting plan ahead. But let's see if Master allows that to happen.
Okay. Any questions, anyone?
Yeah.
It's been a few years now. Why isn't there not been anything official from like the Ishwapuri camp? Like, there's nothing said officially of where Ishwapuri's left it. I mean,
be patient.
We were told 6 months, then 8 months, then a year.
No. Don't worry. The administration are running the organisation on behalf of Ishwarji, and they're doing the best they can to maintain the momentum of the initiates, and to try and build that little dera that they're building there in memory of Master. But the axis, the spiritual shift will move away from there, and there'll be many other locations in America eventually over time, and in the UK and in Europe, where enlightened or even PLMs will come in the future, and begin a new path.
So Ishwapuri left instructions?
He didn't leave instructions directly, apart from the administration instructions, administer it. No, he didn't mention. Privately, he has mentioned a few things, which I'm not at liberty to say. But on a public sense, he hasn't left a successor. And all he's mentioned is that there'll be a man and a woman who will eventually come out after all the pretenders are gone, let's say, vying for it, and they will eventually be accepted, and but they won't be. They'll be in Ishwarji's name, but not necessarily at the location where they have the dera now here in America. But they will go and visit in time. Let this generation of oldies and people, let them pass away. You know, the old guard, the old school type of thinking, they're always very narrow. You know, even in Bias, everything is always very difficult for new masters to come or people have a slightly different viewpoint, because masters bring the path with them. They speak from their own experience. So according to the audience, they speak with a certain level of authority. And if somebody comes in who's not exactly echoing every word that Ishwarji says, they say he's a false one. He may not be false, but he's speaking from his own perspective, what he has seen, covering ground that maybe Ishwarji didn't cover. Because there's so much vastness to the spiritual path in reality. All of the basics are the same. And as long as they're not straying away from the basic concepts, but they're maybe expanding upon it or highlighting or emphasizing, then they're okay. They're still telling the truth. But it takes time for the Sangha to accept somebody new, because they have this ideal of what a master should be. You know, they should be born pure and perfect in every way, and they should have this lifestyle and they should have that. But actually, it's not true. Even the worst villain can become a master tomorrow if the Lord chooses to enlighten them. An enlightened one is enlightened. And regardless of what karma they have, which is just what's in their destiny, they can still become enlightened. There's no bar to enlightenment from the Lord's point of view. Sometimes the Lord does throw a spanner in the works to say, oh, you know, you egotist, thinking that you're looking for this because it's all to do with the mind and the character, yet you put somebody there who's maybe got a difficult past or controversial and put them in the head. Yeah, but they speak with authority and conviction, and they can actually fulfill what they're saying. So when the Lord decides such a thing, He can put anybody anywhere. So let's just leave it open for now. Ishwar just said, man and a woman, you know. But there are going to be different levels of master as well. You have to understand that anybody who's reached Parbrahm is a master. Anybody who's reached beyond mind and Maya is a master. So it's just when we talk about PLA, a perfect living master, that's a different category. You know, and that requires that special transmission to take place. And when that transmission takes place, and that one is told to go public with it, then they will. Yeah. So hopefully that answered that question. Any other questions? No?
That's it.
Okay, so let's, we've had a long session today, so let's break for our lunch now. And hopefully we'll see you all again in the new year. In the meantime, hope you have a good Christmas and a happy new year to you all that is to come.
So dehi paje har ki sev pajo gobind pul mat ja मानस जानम का एही ला